This is a Beltway Wars Invitational production, the Draft Recap Special Show, hosted by Adam Jackson and Patrick Wheelton. Enjoy, like, and subscribe.
Welcome back to the Beltway Wars Invitational podcast with your wonderful hosts Adam Jackson and Patrick Wheelton. We're going to be going over the draft recap special, one of our longest shows of the fantasy football season. Going through each team, strengths, weaknesses, grades, all that great stuff as we do from years past, and we're going to continue it this year. Maybe some new little things that we're going to be doing. But it should be a good show. Patrick, any thoughts? Just looking at this draft board, this big, wonderful draft board that we have here. Sorry, that's my horrible Trump impression. But what did you think of how the draft went? And any surprises? Anything you didn't see in terms of trends of how the draft board went?
I don't know about you, but I feel like the running backs at the top of the draft went pretty quickly. Like I feel like a lot of the wide receivers that I'm used to seeing go and be gone in the first two rounds kind of got pushed into like the late second, early third round by the running backs. And then, of course, you had the quarterback run, 5 of them taken in the third round, which pushed some wide receivers even further down to the point where, a guy like Waddle or Metcalf, Cup, these are guys that I'm typically seeing in the third round or even into the second get pushed down to the fourth. So that was the big surprise for me sort of early on in the draft is just the running backs getting taken. There was a mad rush for running back early in this draft. What'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the draft board here, there are not a lot of teams that went the hero RB or zero RB in terms of just drafting. I can only see 2, Mike with Tyreek Hill, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Dustin with Justin Jefferson, Drake, London, the 2 teams that just went wide receiver, first and second round. So I think it just shows the premium that running backs have in fantasy football. They're more likely to get injured. You need to make sure that you get a couple that you like, just in case that injury bug pops up on your roster. So I think it just kind of shows how at least this league puts an importance on the running back position.
Sure. I also
yeah.
thought I was surprised to say, and this is like not as important as running backs and wide receivers in the first round and second round, but kickers and defenses. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, but like to me, kickers are a lot more random, and defenses like a good defense can actually make a difference. Actually, in my other league, I took two defenses back to back. I had some draft flexibility based on my keeper players, so I was able to take defenses a little bit earlier, and I
Yeah.
took the Ravens and the 49ers. So I'm actually trying a new strategy in my other league to play like picking between two really great defenses from week to week. And it was just surprising to me that three kickers went before any defenses at all. So, again, not that important, but just interesting to see because, I think, granted, there are Tucker, Aubrey, McPherson, great kickers out there, but I don't know. I feel like they're a little bit more random than a really solid defense. So I was surprised to see kickers before defenses.
I always have a little bit of a smile when the first kicker goes off the board because it just means that I'm going to get better value near those later rounds. That's at least how I feel about it. But getting Brandon Aubrey and Justin Tucker, can't really go wrong with that. Those aren't kickers that you're going to ever have to worry about. So I guess that's the kind of opposite argument for taking kickers. But let's go ahead. Let's start with the first team here. We're just going to go in order based on draft order. So I'm going to start off here. Just a little bit about my team last year. I went 13-1. The grades, because this was a request that we had. So the grades for last year for my team was a B plus, and you actually gave me an A. So good on you for that. You identified the talented squad that I had last year, going 13-1. But let's look at here. Let's look at the first 5 draft picks. Christian McCaffrey, overall number 1. That's kind of been the consensus for the past couple, I guess, months for Christian McCaffrey. Even though he's been injured, hasn't been playing in training camp. Chris Olave in the second round, Mike Evans in the third, Trey McBride, and rounding out the top 5 with Malik Neighbors. Anything that you see in my draft strategy or draft board that interests you?
Well, yeah, and I'm going to kind of give a theme, a thought, kind of an encapsulation of each team in a word or phrase. And
Okay.
and for you, it was take what's given to you.
Okay.
And I think you did a really good job in this draft of just kind of letting the board play out and kind of taking what kind of fell to you. I don't know if you intended to sort of go the hero RB route like you did. Obviously, if you're going to do that, McCaffrey is a great one to do it with. But you didn't take your second running back until round 6, and then took another in round 7 with Pollard and Mostert. And you were the only one of 2 teams in the league that did not take a second running back within the top 5 picks, I believe. Or, yeah, it was you and Josh that were the only ones that did not take 2 running backs in the top 5. So, kind of an interesting strategy, but you really you took the value of guys that fell to you. I think Evans in the third, McBride in the fourth, and Neighbors in the fifth were all guys that maybe didn't expect it would be there by that point. I think all guys that you got at really good values, and so I think you just did a nice job at sort of letting the draft come to you, taking the guy that was available, not giving up value to just go after one position or another. So I thought it was a good draft for you. I think you did really well.
Yeah, just looking at the board and how it shaped up, how we were talking about how, running backs going very, very early in this draft. I did a ton of mock drafts, just, computer simulated drafts. Barely any of them had Chris Olave getting back to me in that second round. So I was very happy that he was there. I expect a big year from him. Mike Evans, I have a soft spot in him from last year, trading him away. I won't do that again to you, baby. Don't worry, Mike Evans. You're staying on my team for all of this year. But just going down, get Tony Pollard, Raheem Mostert, Deontay Johnson. Then I finally picked my quarterback, Jaden Daniels, the rookie sensation out of Washington. DeAndre Hopkins, Brock Purdy, and then just a bunch of kind of dart throws in terms of maybe some running backs that the running back in front of them doesn't have quite the grasp on the starting job. Just some dart throws there for me. So that was kind of the strategy I went with is, all these running backs are coming off the board very quickly. I'm going to get my hero RB, get some mid-round talent that should have starting jobs or a good system, I would say Mostert falls in that regard, and then just some dart throws at the end. Hopefully, one of those three becomes a startable option for my team. So let's go ahead and go into favorite picks versus least favorite picks. So I'm going to let you start off. What was your favorite pick of mine in the draft?
Well, I liked a lot of them, but I want to, I guess, mention a guy that I didn't mention and a guy that's a little bit further down. You just mentioned him, Jaden Daniels, in the ninth, quarterback for your Washington Commanders. Not your Washington Commanders, but
They might be
maybe
after this
somebody
year.
in the audience. Sarah's Washington Commanders.
If he ends up a top five,
In
he
the
might
ninth,
be.
in the ninth round, I believe he might have been, let's see, the 11th quarterback off the board, something like that. So I mean, this is a guy who I think there's a lot of excitement, a lot of hype about. I've seen him go earlier in drafts than that. I think, again, it's an example of you waiting and just sort of waiting the position out and taking the best value that sort of fell to you down in the ninth round. So I'm excited about him. I've got him as a backup in my other league. I guess I just think it's great value to get. So I love the opportunity that you have there. You draft Brock Purdy behind him just in case he doesn't work out or in case he needs a little bit of adjusting to the NFL, that you can kind of pick and choose between two pretty decent quarterbacks. So I like the strategy there. I like taking value at other positions early and just grabbing that potential kind of in the middle rounds. So that's my favorite.
Okay, so what was your least favorite?
My least favorite pick, and I get that, you were excited to get Olave there at the end of the second. He was one of the guys, him and Drake London, basically going at the same point in these drafts. I kind of just, I'm a little bit suspicious of both of them. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the fact that Derek Carr is throwing to him. I know he had a great year last year. I just don't know if I can trust that Saints offense. And those are just two guys that I've been sort of down on because of where I've been drafting in a couple other leagues. I haven't had the opportunity to take them. And I'm thankful for that because have been avoiding them. So again, I'm kind of reaching here because there weren't really a whole lot of picks that I didn't like. I understand why you did it. It's just a player that I'm not too much into this year.
Okay, so just going with my favorite pick here would probably be Trey McBride in the fourth round. I think he has an opportunity to be the number one overall tight end in fantasy football. If you can get him in the fourth round, I will take that bet all day. He was very much involved. His numbers were kind of skewed last year, just because of Kyler Murray being out for the majority of the season. But when he came back, he performed very well with Kyler. So I'm very excited about that pick. Trey McBride, I expect him to be at least a top three, and I think he has a chance to be the number one overall tight end at the end of the day. My least favorite pick here is probably Tony Pollard. A lot of question marks there in Tennessee. Not really sure how involved Tyjae Spears is going to be involved in that offense. Is Tony Pollard going to have that PPR value that he had a couple years ago in Dallas? So not really too sure about that. Just looking at the board here, would I've rather just taken a chance on Nick Chubb and put him on, the PUP or the IR slot, or even a Devin Singletary, waiting another round to get, an established starter there in New York. So just a lot of question marks about Tony Pollard. But after the first five picks, you're kind of being a little more risky in your picks. So I would just say Tony Pollard was my least favorite pick in that time. And I think I got a little panicked when I saw the amount of running backs going off the board, and I haven't even picked up my second one yet. So I went back to back Tony Pollard, Raheem Mostert. So that's what I went there. In terms of make or break players, Pat, this is a new segment you wanted to do. Who is my make or break player for the 2024 season?
I mean, to me, this is an easy one, and it is your 1-1 in Christian McCaffrey. And it's because of two reasons. Number one, the history of injury, the fact that he, is starting to age a little bit. Obviously, he's a phenomenal player, and he's a physical freak of nature. So that kind of gives you confidence. But he has been dealing with injuries in the past few years. Has missed some time, and and the fact that you did wait until the sixth round to get Pollard and then to get Mostert in the seventh, that means McCaffrey as your RB1 is extra critical to stay healthy. So I think in a lot of ways he is your make or break player.
Well, I will piggyback on you and do a make or break player off the fly just by looking at my board. I think Malik Neighbors is the make or break player for me. Wide receiver 3 is going to be starting for me. Just a lot of unknowns with rookie wide receivers. He looks great in camp. That doesn't mean it's going to translate over to the regular season. Daniel Jones is still there. We all know about the struggles that he has. If the hype is real, he could be a top 10 wide receiver this year. Could. I mean, that's very. But if he has that kind of season, then I think my regular season at least will shape up to be a very good one. Whereas the opposite side, if he really struggles out of the gate and loses that confidence, I feel like I have a huge hole there in my wide receiver 3. Maybe I'm starting Deontay Johnson, who's in a new offense as well, or DeAndre Hopkins, who is old and has competition there in Tennessee. So that's my make or break for my squad. So, without further ado, what is the grade for my team this year?
Well, I did a pretty good job at predicting it last year, and I think you had maybe not quite as good of a draft, but very close. So I gave you an A minus this year.
And me and Pat did not discuss what grades we were giving each team before we started the podcast. We didn't talk about it at all. So I also gave myself an A minus as well. Just like the diversity of talent, I have a running back, wide receiver, and I kind of like a lot of the dart throws. I especially like Jaleel McLaughlin there. I think that he can make a run at that starting running back position in Denver if Javonte Williams gets off to a rough start. Okay. So let's go over to Scott's team here. Do you remember I think it's like the Westminster Wonder Boys or something. I think that's his new name.
Yeah, that's it.
So I'm the Barracudas this year. Scott is the Westminster Wonder Boys. Last year he went 7-7 on the season. Last year I gave him an A minus, and Pat, you gave him a B. So looking at his draft board here, he starts off with the second overall pick, Bijan Robinson. Goes Rashad White in the second round. So it goes RB. Then goes Josh Allen as the number 1 overall quarterback taken in this draft. Sam Laporta, and to round out the top 5, Michael Pittman out of Indianapolis. Looking at his squad, what's the biggest takeaway that you got from the squad?
My sort of phrase for Scott's team is it's a balanced build. The fact that he's got, one of every kind of big position, running back, wide receiver, quarterback, and tight end, all, one of each at least in the top 5. He's got 2 running backs in there as well with his first 2 picks. He was only one of 2 players to go running back, so kind of an interesting strategy, especially, in a year where running backs went heavy early. People went after the running back, and he was able to get Rashad White at the end of the second round. So I feel like it's pretty balanced. The wide receiver position is the one position that, he sort of ignored a little bit until the 5th round. So we'll talk a little bit about, what we think of that wide receiver core and how big of a weakness it is for this team. And he was the only player in the league to not take a wide receiver in the first 4 rounds. So kind of a little bit different of a strategy, kind of maybe feeling like he took what sort of came to him in that respect, but did go Josh Allen in the 3rd, did get Sam Laporta. I love both of those picks. I love both of those players. Obviously, 2 elite players at their positions, so you can never criticize that in drafts. I don't feel like it was necessarily a reach. Beginning of the 3rd round, for Allen, I think we've had quarterbacks go earlier, in our drafts in the past. But overall, I just felt like it was a really balanced build.
My thoughts on it is I don't know if I'm a huge fan of waiting to the 5th round to pick your number 1 wide receiver. some question marks with Michael Pittman. I mean, he played a lot with Gardner Minshew last year when Anthony Richardson went out. How's he going to fit with Anthony Richardson throughout, 18 games now? Is Anthony Richardson going to be able to get him the ball consistently? Is a big question mark for me. Taking Josh Allen in the third, I mean, as you can tell with my draft strategy, not a huge fan of taking quarterbacks that early. He could have got a Debo Samuel. He could have got a Nico Collins, a Devontae Adams there, which would have been a nice number one wide receiver to have. But if you are going to take a quarterback, might as well take the number one scoring quarterback. So I guess there's a little offset there. Just looking at the rest of this board, take Samir White in the sixth, Terry McLaurin, Keon Coleman, Jalen Warren, Tyler Lockett, Caleb Williams, Jared Jeudy now in Cleveland, Zach Charbonnet, Adam Thielen, and then the defense and kicker. So, through those middle rounds here, he tries to make up for the deficiencies of the early round with going with, Terry McLaurin and Keon Coleman, Tyler Lockett. I'm concerned that, some of these names, and there's different situations for each now where he could struggle getting points from the wide receiver position regularly.
Yeah, and I one of the kind of slight criticisms I have of this team as well, and it's not just kind of the first three wide receivers to me. It's almost the last three receivers too. Tyler Lockett, Jerry Jeudy, Adam Thielen. Players that are kind of trending older, especially Lockett and Thielen, veterans and guys that are probably on the downswing of their career. Now, Thielen has proved us wrong before, so maybe that is a great pick. I feel like in those rounds, 10 through 14, there were some other more exciting players that you kind of need to take a chance on if you take kind of your first receiver in the fifth round. I feel like it's worth taking some more chances later in the draft at a young player like Jalen Polk, like Josh Palmer, like Xavier Legit, I think is how you pronounce his name. Just some guys that maybe have a little bit more upside than a Lockett, a Jeudy, or a Thielen. So that's kind of the receiver core is definitely a question mark for me, and whether he has enough depth there to really put out three, if not four, guys on a consistent basis.
So I'm just going to go ahead with my favorite pick and my least favorite pick. Starting with my favorite pick, I'm going to go with Terry McLaurin. I think he's my favorite pick of this draft. Revamped Washington offense. I'm a believer in Jalen Daniels. He's the clear number one option there in Washington. I think he's going to get fed a lot. I think he's very talented. So going in the seventh round, around the likes of Keenan Allen, Xavier Worthy, T. Higgins, Tank Dell, George Pickens. I think I'd rather have Terry McLaurin over George Pickens and Keenan Allen and things of that nature. So good on him for, not, if you're going to go the route of not picking wide receivers, to find good value there in Terry McLaurin in the seventh round. My least favorite pick is Keon Coleman. Haven't heard a lot of things out of camp for Buffalo. Young receiver, very crowded there. You have Dalton Kincaid, you have Curtis Samuel, who's going to get his looks. James Cook is going to be heavily involved rushing and in the passing game. I just don't know how much they're going to trust him early on, and I feel like that if he doesn't get off to a good start at the beginning of the season, that it could spell disaster for at least his fantasy production this season. I could see him as the number 3 or 4 option on that Buffalo Bills team. So haven't really heard a lot of news out of Bills camp about him. So he's very much unknown. It's just I would rather have Hollywood Brown, Christian Watson, maybe even Jameson Williams out of Detroit, instead of Keon Coleman. I just think I think you could have waited on him. I think it was a little bit of a reach.
Yeah, I mean, I won't say too much about him. I have heard some decent things in camp about him. I think they do like him in Buffalo. I think the latest reports, and you have to take it worth a grain of salt, but they expect him to have a significant role, is the word coming out of the Bills organization. But that, and to some degree, he is one of those high upside receivers. So I criticize the last three receivers, but he is probably the one guy on this team that I think could sort of come out of nowhere and be an unexpected benefit for Scott's team. But in terms of my favorite pick, I'm going to go back to Sam Laporta. Kelsey went in the third round, and Scott kind of just took the value that came to him with a guy like Sam Laporta coming back to him almost, actually a full round later. I think what. So Kelsey went in the third pick of the third round, and Laporta nabs Laporta at the 11th pick of the fourth round. So. I'm sure if he was targeting Laporta there, I don't know, but I think it was just really good value to take Laporta in an offense that should continue to feed him the ball quite a bit. Him and Amon-Ra St. Brown with the Lions, kind of a pass-heavy offense, an exciting offense. I really like him this year.
Okay. And what is your least favorite pick?
I think it's Pittman.
Okay.
And I mean, I can't say that I like a lot of the guys after that. Maybe Amari Cooper and Devontae Smith I can kind of consider in that range. Um, Rashee Rice, who goes around later, maybe I like him, and all kind of in the same range. I just don't like him as a player. Again, the value I don't have too big of a problem with, but I'm just a little bit down on him. The Colts offense, I'm not exactly sure what to expect there. We'll see if Richardson can continue to grow in his second year coming off of the injury last year. Um, I'm just kind of down on him, and I can't exactly explain why.
Yeah, I just think with the new quarterback situation, there's just a lot of unknowns. I mean, looking at Anthony Richardson, we all know the rushing ability, but how can he progress as a effective pass thrower in the NFL? He doesn't have a lot of starting experience through high school or college, so not a lot of experience, just a lot of unknowns. In terms of fantasy, I think Anthony Richardson would be fine, but will he be able to translate that into his supporting cast and making sure that, because Scott's going to need Michael Pittman to be a top 15 wide receiver this year. If he wants to, he can't have him at 25, let's just say. So I think that's just kind of an unknown. And through 1 through 5, you can take unknowns, but you really want to kind of look for those solid picks that has the best chance to give you fantasy production. So I kind of do agree with Michael Pittman. I am worried about him just because of the unknowns with the rapport with Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, and I think to your point, exactly is why I have him listed also as my make or break
Okay.
player. I mean, to take him in the fifth round as your first receiver, I mean, you've got exactly what you just said. He has to be a top 15 receiver for him, and so that's the definition of make or break to me. He's got to achieve that for Scott to probably have a shot.
Okay, I'll go in a little different direction. I'll go White, or Rashad White. I think he's the
Yep.
make or break this year. Been
Mm.
kind of a tiny bit of rumblings about Bucky Irving, and
Yes, there have.
Rashad White a f- is not very efficient, but he gets all the work. So that's a big thing here. He catches a lot of balls, things like that. He kind of reminds me of a little bit of like Fournette back in the day, where it's not that
Mhm.
they're like an older Fournette, not that like game breaking speed, but is a bruiser, will get the tough yards, but just not very efficient on the ground. So uh, in the second round, I mean, with some of the question marks, is Bucky Irving going to cut into his production at all? I mean, he could have. I mean, Scott could have taken Chris Olave, Mike Evans, Debo Samuel. I mean, that would have been a great 1-2 punch with Bijan Robinson and Debo Samuel, with Brandon Ayuk probably on the move there, so he would be the target monster there in San Francisco. So I just think he needs that top 10 year that he had last year, uh, and for him to continue that. But just a lot of things that I'm hearing, not a lot of people are excited about Rashad White. He's not, a guy that, looking at the other running backs in round 2, people are excited about Williams, Gibbs, ETN. Achan, those type of players where it's like game breaking speed and can bust an 80-yard run at any time. Where Rashad White is more of just like a ground and pound bruiser, gonna get you 3.5 yards per carry each week, but needs the volume to be fantasy relevant.
Yeah, and we should say as well, the one kind of difference from last year, agreed that you want him to produce the same numbers that he did last year. The Bucks do have a new offensive coordinator, so that does concern me a little bit that the production and the value that White had last year, anytime you bring in a new system, a new coordinator, you wonder whether or not that
If he's
can
married to
maintain or
him.
that he can. Exactly. And so I'm just
Mhm.
looking, I don't know much about him. Liam Cohen is the new offensive coordinator. He comes to the Bucks from let's see, was the offensive coordinator at University of Kentucky in 21 and 23 and was the Rams offensive coordinator in
Okay.
2022. So
And the
just
Rams like to
trying
mix
to
it up
think
a
of
little bit. Just, I mean,
that's true.
so
100%.
okay.
Yeah, that
So
would have been like the Cam Akers, Kyron Williams range when
mhm.
both of those guys were getting run a couple years ago. Who else was kicking around with the Rams? I feel like they had a new running back du jour, from month to month. Who was it before Kyron Williams that was sharing with Akers? That those guys you couldn't tell
Daryl
who was going to be
Henderson.
good for. Errol Henderson. There you go. So you're right, and they do like Bucky Irvin for sure.
And it's like that would be the worst case scenario for Scott, where it's like you have that kind of veteran in Cam Akers, Daryl Henderson, and then that rookie comes out of nowhere, that Kyron Williams type, which could be Bucky Irving, and they just decide to go with him if he shows promise early. So definitely just a situation to keep in mind for Scott. I don't know. I do not believe Scott got back to us about his favorite or least favorite pick. So thank you, Scott, for that. Um,
I don't think. Don't quote me on
let's
that. At least I can't find
maybe
it.
maybe he just texted me because some people just texted me. Um,
Oh, okay.
let me.
Well, while you look for that, I will give you my draft grade. Did we already talked about his draft grades from last year? Did we talk about that already?
Uh, yes, at the beginning. I
Okay.
gave him an A minus, and you gave him a B.
And he was what at the end of the
He
season?
was 7-7.
Okay.
No,
I'm
he
two
did
for two.
not. Oh no, he did. Wait a minute. Um, he gave me his least favorite pick. Oh no, he gave me both. No, I'm sorry, Scott. You gave me both. I apologize for that. His least favorite pick was Keon Coleman.
Hmm.
A few wide receivers got drafted before him that I wanted. I don't know how he's going to do in the Bills' offense. That's his reasoning. And his favorite was Laporta, so he didn't expect him to fall to the third round. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, kind of what we were kind of talking about there. We like Sam Laporta, um, and me and him had question marks about Keon Coleman. I didn't remember he wrote that, so it was literally just by chance that was my least favorite pick. Um,
Hmm.
but let's go over to the grades here for Scott. What did you have for Scott this year?
So I had him penciled in. I'm going to change it. I had him penciled in as a B plus. But the more I think about these receivers, the more concerned I am. And so I'm going to downgrade that to a B, a solid B. Again, I think it's a balanced build. I really love the first four picks. I love Allen. I love Laporta. I think the running backs are solid. Zamir White as a three, in a half point PPR league. I don't mind it. If it was full point, I'd want a receiver in that flex spot.
The
So I'm going to
corpse
go
of
B for
Alexander
Scott.
Madison is still there in Oakland.
Yeah, I know. I know.
All right, so
So B for Scott.
okay, so B for Scott from Pat. I gave him a C plus. Just a lot of question marks. Like I said, Rashad White, Michael Pittman, Zamir White is also kind of a question mark. Not really sure how it's going to shake out. Kean Coleman. Going down the list here, what are you going to get out of Adam Thielen? Jared Judy's complete, question mark. Coming from Denver now in a new offense, a more crowded offense. Not really sure what value he's going to have. So I gave him a C plus just because of the weak wide receivers. He's really going to need Pittman and Terry McLaurin to, exceed expectations this year. I think if he wants to challenge for a fantasy championship. And I will say this: don't be mad at me about my grades. Last year, I did not give anyone a C, so I wanted to change it up this year and be a little bit more harsh with my grades. So, just with that, I'm going to be real with all of you. Uh, so, but yeah, so a B from you, a C plus for me for Scott.
I
Going
think
up,
I may have upgraded my level of realness. I think I may be even realer than you
okay,
because
we'll
I've got
see.
I'm dipping down into the D's at some point in this draft. So
Me
just
too.
okay, all right.
All
We'll
right,
see.
so let's go. Let's go to Mike here with the third overall pick. Mike last year ended the year with 7-7. I gave him a B last year. You gave him a C last year. So 500 mark. C's get degrees. That's how that works. Uh, his first five picks, he starts off with Tyreek Hill at number 3. Remember, this was before we had the contract signed by CeeDee Lamb. I don't know if that affected his pick at
Hmm.
all, but he goes with. I think they're 1 and 1A, so I don't really mind that. Tyreek Hill there at 3. He goes Marvin Harrison Jr. at the 2, so he goes wide receiver, wide receiver. Then goes Travis Kelce, James Conner, and to round out the top 5, Aaron Jones. Just to go through the rest of his board, he goes Christian Kirk, Dak Prescott, Jordan Addison, Austin Eckler, Mitchell. I think he's the rookie there in Indianapolis.
You know,
Yeah, it goes Jared Goff, uh, Cole Kmet, Hungwei Chu, uh, Elijah Mitchell, who is now out for the year, so he has been dropped. And then, defense and Quentin Johnson. So, first team that we've covered so far that went wide receiver, the true zero RB. How do you think that worked out for him? He gets 2 studs, or at least 1 proven stud and 1 unproven stud, I would say. So how do you think the rest of his draft rounded out after going wide receiver, wide receiver?
well, I don't consider this zero RB. You're
Okay.
certainly waiting on RB a little bit. It's not, I think zero RB is more like fifth, sixth round, maybe as your first.
We'll
So
get to that.
he ends up taking Connor in the fourth. Um, I think the theme here is that he is very shallow and very old at running back. James Conner, Aaron Jones, 2 guys that have been in the league for a
Is
little
that
while.
his catchphrase? Shallow and old.
Shallow and old at
Wait, you
running
didn't give a
back. So
catchphrase for?
we're
Did you give a catchphrase for Scott's?
I did balance build,
Balance build.
balance build
Okay,
for
so
Scott.
shallow,
Shallow and
shallow,
old at
old.
running back
Okay.
for Mike. Connor, Jones, and Eckler. I
Yeah.
mean, does it get any older than that? And you mentioned it. He's not only the first player manager to go wide receiver in this draft and take a really young receiver in the second round, but also the first manager to lose a running back to IR, a
Yeah.
season-ending injury in Elijah Mitchell. So only currently has 3 running backs on this team, and they're all old, and
And
a
didn't
couple
Mike
of them are
learn anything
playing.
from last year? Didn't he have like no running backs last year? I feel like it was one of those teams where he
Uh,
was starting
was
like
that
Ezekiel Elliott.
It could be. I mean, look, Connor missed 4 weeks in the middle of the season last year. Aaron Jones was off and on hurt. He missed like 6 games, 7 games, all over, sprinkled throughout the season. Eckler, there's probably a reason the Chargers let him go and brought in Gus Edwards and brought in J.K. Dobbins. The Ravens outcast Eckler. May not have it anymore based on last year's production. So I don't know. I just think this is a really risky old running back core for Mike. So I'm worried about it.
Yeah, just I mean, I do like the James Conner pick. Maybe he went way ahead than what I thought he was going to go, but he's one of the most solid running backs you could get. I mean, I think over the past 4 seasons, he's the only running back or one of 3 running backs to have over 1,000 yards and 8+ touchdown. Excuse me, 8+ touchdowns. So not a sexy pick, but just reliable is what I would say. Um, I love the Hill pick at 3. That's completely fine. Marvin Harrison, all reports say that he's going to be the number 1 option there for um, Kyler Murray in the Cardinals offense. goes Travis Kelce. I'm okay with that in the third round. I think the hype of his downfall is a little overblown. He's still probably the top option for Patrick Mahomes in KC. But just going through his board, like you said, James Conner is old. Aaron Jones is old and injured a lot. And Austin Eckler, old and injured a lot, and might not be the starter, and probably isn't the starter there in
Yep.
DC. So just kind of an interesting way his draft board kind of fell. And it'll be interesting to see what your favorite and least favorite picks are.
Well, I'm gonna start with my least favorite pick because I want to kind of ask you a question and quiz you and put you in Mike's shoes here after you take Hill and Harrison, which are two fantastic, first two picks for Mike. In the third round, obviously we talked earlier about the massive rush on running back in the first two rounds. I think there were 13 running backs go out of the first 24 picks. So just very running back heavy. In my opinion, right there around 13, 14. Well, actually, I think there's about 16 or 17 running backs that I'm comfortable with as an RB1 this year. I think it ends right before Mike picked in the fourth round. So he took Connor in the fourth. The running backs who went just before that are Mixon, Walker, and Kamara. I still like those guys as kind of a hero RB or kind of waiting on RB approach. But after Mixon, I really feel like there's a huge drop off down
Yes.
to Connor and to Jones.
Well, I would.
And so
Well, I would say that I would put Connor, Mixon, Walker, and Kamara in the same tier. Now, it doesn't mean that they're the same player, and I think that, you know, Connor is probably the last one of that tier. But look at after that. I mean, Connor's in a different tier than Montgomery Swift, I would say. Just because of the amount of opportunity he's going to have. He's not going to have, people behind him. Aaron Jones always hurt. David Montgomery has Gibbs there. Swift, as we know, Khalil Herbert, anytime he gets an opportunity, he does pretty well. So I don't think he has a stranglehold on that job. I think he needed to take him where he did just because of those next running backs coming off the board. I think there is a significant drop off.
I agree that I like him more than Montgomery or Swift for sure, but I don't like him. He's kind of in a tier of his own. And Jones is probably in the same tier. I mean, they probably
Yeah.
went, where they should. It's just the biggest decision, my least favorite pick is Travis Kelce, kind of for this reason. Like, I love the start of Hill and Harrison. I love it. I mean, those are potentially two of the most electric players in the NFL coming into this year. Taking Kelce in the third really made it so that when it came back to you at the end of the fourth, you had to go running back. You just had to. Um,
Right. It kind of puts you in a pigeonhole there.
totally.
Yeah.
And so I just think the fact that running backs went early, if I would have been Mike and I would have seen how many running backs went in the first and second round, when it came to me in the beginning of the third, I think I would have said, man, I like Kelce here, but shoot, there's not going to be any running backs left. And he could have had James Cook. He could have had Alvin Kamara,
Yeah.
Kenneth Walker, or Joe Mixon. So I think that was I hate that pick. I
I
hate
think
Kelce
that
there.
he was. I mean, as we said, hindsight is 2020. Uh, doesn't know, theoretically, because he doesn't know that all the quarterback run is going to start there. Theoretically, in round 3 and round 4, before it gets them, Kelsey, McBride, and Laporta could be gone. And if he wants to get one of those top 3, top 4 tight ends, you gotta pick. I mean, at round 3, he had the pick of whichever one he wanted, so he went with that. I do agree. It's an odd place, I would say, to take a tight end. I know he's like the best tight end, whatever, but it's just like
Mm,
you
don't know
have
about that.
you don't know about round 3 being a weird place to take a tight end.
No, I don't know that he's the best tight end.
No, I'm not saying he's the best tight end. I'm saying he's a top tight end.
Yeah.
I see. Me and you disagree on if the hatred of Kelsey has gone too far or not. I still think he's a top 3 tight end, just because in that system he knows the system. He's going to be involved with Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, I feel like, is going to play better this year. His fantasy production is going to be better this year. But to your point, would you rather gone to James Cook there? Would you rather just gone to Nico Collins there? Just really just crush the wide receiver, and
Yeah.
Nico Collins expected to be a top 10. I don't know if I agree with that, but he's expected to be a top 10 wide receiver this year. You get Tyreek Hill, Marvin Harrison, and Nico Collins. That's a very formidable wide receiver core for Mike. So I and just in terms of draft strategy, it's just kind of weird to throw tight end right there where you have, you could even got Debo Samuel. I mean, if you really wanted with Ayuk, like I said before, with
Yep.
Ayuk leaving, he's going to be a target monster. What was your favorite? Did you go over your favorite pick?
I didn't, but Harrison is. I
Okay.
mean, the best value I think of the first two rounds. Just the guy that fell the most compared to where I'm used to seeing him drafted toward the end of the first, maybe early second. Last on the board, pretty much there until close to the end of round two. So just taking the value there, I think is my favorite pick.
Okay. So my least favorite pick here is Jordan Addison in the
Mm.
eighth round. Um, Not because I don't believe in his talent, but about the person that's throwing him the ball. Now, we're not really concerned about Justin Jefferson not getting his looks. I feel like Sam Darnold can get Justin Jefferson the ball. I feel like I, on a good day, could get Justin Jefferson the ball. So, not really too worried about that. He's a freak of nature. But Jordan Addison, I feel like that's where it's going to fall off here. And just looking around the board, people that went after Addison, Deontay Johnson, I'd probably rather have him than Addison. Hollywood Brown, he's hurt, but I think I'd rather have him season long than Jordan Addison. Christian Watson, I'd probably still have over Addison. And then, you get to the Smith and Jigbas and Jameson Williams. So just didn't really, I think he just kind of reached with him. Maybe he panicked a little bit. I don't know what was going through his head. But just didn't really like where that is just because of the state of the Minnesota Viking offense in that passing attack. In terms of my favorite pick, I like Christian Kirk in the sixth round. I think
Mm.
he's there for a big bounce back. Calvin Ridley's now gone; he's in Tennessee. He's going to be moved back to the slot, is what I heard, and that's where he excels the most. You have Gabe Davis on the outside. Let me just look at his depth chart here. Yeah, he's the number one. You have Brian Thomas, who's the rookie, and Gabe Davis on the outside. You put Christian Kirk back in the slot. That's where he thrives. So I think that he has a good chance to be a very solid top 20 wide receiver, and that's exactly what you need when you start with Tyreek Hill and Marvin Harrison. If somehow Christian Kirk can be a top 20, that's, again, very formidable wide receiver core for Mike.
About a make or break for
Wait, wait,
Mike's
wait.
team
Let's
here.
go with. Did he respond with his favorite, least favorite?
He did, yeah. So favorite pick, He's on the same page as I am with Harrison just because of the value, and least favorite pick is Tyreek Hill because of how much he hates him as a person. So um, yeah.
Okay, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. So, make or breaks. I'll go first with my make or break for Mike here. I think it's Marvin Harrison Jr. Just
Mm.
because of the unknowns. Again, rookie wide receivers. You don't have any of that history to see how he kind of jives with an offense. Um, Everything says that he's going to be, the top option, top flight wide receiver that we expect out of him, but just a lot of unknowns. And if he does fall, hits a rookie wall, that could be a severe issue for Mike. So, just with the unknowns with Marvin Harrison, I think that he is the make or break for his team.
Yeah, for me, it's Connor, and we talked
Okay.
about the reasons why. Seeing if we're wrong about that tier drop off from Walker Mixon, Kamara down to Connor. Um, so I just think that it's him, and literally make or break. He either stays healthy or he
That's true.
breaks because of his age. So, a guy that I had last year, I don't know if it was this league or
It
my
was
other
this
league,
league.
but right. And I was debating like him. Actually, it was, it's funny enough, it was Aaron Jones and James Conner who I was debating because each of them had huge issues. Both of them were kind of fighting in and out of injuries and, toward the time of the playoffs last year. And I just couldn't figure out which of those two guys was going to be the best bet. So all of that uncertainty kind of came rushing back to me when I'm looking at these players. So for me, it is Connor at 4.
All right, very good. Grades. Um, I will go first with grades. I gave Mike a solid B. I like
Okay, so
his
we're
wide
different.
receivers. I like just in terms of the ADP, his running backs that he took. I think that's completely fine. It remains to be seen, in terms of injuries, whatnot. James Conner and Aaron Jones were both injured last year. Um, but overall, first 5 picks, I think he did fine.
I I gave Mike a C.
Okay.
Um, that running back core is just
Yeah, there's questions
mm-mm.
for sure.
Questions. One of those guys goes out. Are you really going to feel comfortable with Austin Eckler in there?
Yeah.
Um, Mike's going to be looking for running backs all season on waivers. I guarantee it.
Okay. So let's go over to number 4 pick here. That would be Sarah, the ocean, or I forget what her name. It's the ovaries, but what is it? The it's not
Uh,
Orchid Beach ovaries.
Orchard Beach, yeah, ovaries.
Okay.
Josh and Sarah, of course, from Orchard Beach.
Okay. So
Probably the coolest current hometown in the league.
I have to think about that for a second. Ocean Pines is pretty nice. Shout out to Dustin. Um,
Well, that's kind of like home number 2, but yeah, anyway, okay.
going number 4 here. Just last year, Sarah went 6-8. I gave her a B last year. You gave her a B minus. Going through her first 5: CeeDee Lamb, Devin Achan, Jalen Hurts, Stephon Diggs now in Houston, and David Montgomery to round out the top 5. Going through the rest of her draft: George Pickens, Evan Ingram, Luke McConkey? I don't know.
Lad McConkey.
Lad McConkey. Okay, Lad McConkey.
Yeah, rookie.
Uh, Tajay Spears, uh, Ty Chandler, Khalil Shakir, Evan McPherson. Talking about those kickers, kind of early. New York Jets defense: Kate Otten, Kate Otten, uh, Jahad Dotson, and Jatavian Wicks to round out her squad. That was a lot of hard names to
I
pronounce.
I know, and as I'm waiting for you to say it, I'm like, oh
Well,
shit,
I had to look them
because
up
I
because I
know
don't
these.
I don't know D Wicks. I'm sorry, Jake. I don't know your fourth wide receiver on the Packers. Um,
Right.
but just going through that's very funny. Going through her first 5 picks, goes with CeeDee Lamb, probably a little bit of a value, just because maybe it fell a slot or so, just because of his contract issues. Goes around, gets Devin Achan in the second round. So wide receiver, running back to start it off, and then gets Jalen Hurts in the third. Uh, kind of very didn't really pick one lane, I would say, in terms of wide receiver or running back. Kind of was kind of balanced across the board for Sarah. So what was her draft strategy catchphrase for you this year?
Well, there is a distinct possibility that she could lack a true bell cow running back. She did take 2 in the top 5, but if you look at all the names on this team,
Yeah.
and there are only 4 of them, Achan and Montgomery are both in a situation. They're both great players, but they just happen to be in offenses that have a lot of other weapons, including another running back. So obviously, Achan, we know Mostert was hugely productive last year. They both were. But there is always the possibility that Achan will regress down to the mean. I think he was fortunate by a lot of good luck last year, a lot of good production, a lot of big runs. He certainly has the talent to do it, but it's always a question mark when you've got another player in that offense that was as productive as Mostert was last year. Same thing with Montgomery. Now he's sort of in the opposite position. He is more the veteran with a younger Jahmyr Gibbs kind of coming up behind him. They play different roles on the team, but Gibbs is hugely talented, and so and the Lions pass a lot. You know, that's a
Yeah.
high efficiency pass offense with a great tight end and a great receiver. So I think the lack of a bell cow, Chandler and Spears later in the draft. I like Spears a lot. I just worry about the volume from week to week and maintaining consistent volume for for all of these running backs throughout the year.
Yeah, it is kind of funny that her first two running backs are kind of in the exact same situation but opposite. Where it's like Devin Achan
Yes.
is the young player, but he has Rasheed Mostert there. And then, David Montgomery is the savvy veteran and Gibbs is waiting in the wings. So just it depends on how that's going to shake out is how Sarah's season's going to go. If it's 50-50, you're kind of hoping that with the draft capital that you spend on Devin Achan, you're hoping it's not 50-50. You're hoping it's closer to 60-40 for Devin Achan. So just a big question mark there. Taking your first running back off the board for Sarah. So just something to watch out. I guess we're just going to watch and see how that works out for Sarah. What was your favorite and least favorite pick for Sarah's squad?
I think my favorite pick was probably Evan Engram. I think he went at the right part of the draft. I think waiting on tight end and still getting one of those top 7 or 8 guys. I think that's a good place to be. I obviously did not do that, but I kind of wish I had. That's one of my big regrets is not taking a guy like Engram or Ferguson that went back-to-back picks to Sarah and Brian in the 7th. But I like the value that she got from the tight end position by waiting and still getting a decent player in that round.
Okay, and what was your least favorite?
I I think I'm leaning toward boy, I'm sort of split on this because I again, Achan, the value, I mean, was he the best running back available where she got him? Yes. Was David Montgomery the best running back value, the best running back on the board when she got him? Yes. It's just unfortunate. So I don't think I'm going to go there. I might go with Stephon Diggs. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I he's one of the he may be this I think he's the second wide receiver taken in this draft that is maybe not the number one on their team. It's probably the same reason. He's probably my make or break for that same reason. I mean, Ayuk went in the third, and he's obviously got Debo Samuel there, but Diggs very clearly could be the number two to Nico Collins or to Tank Dell from week to week. There's so much volume in that offense. They've 3 really elite wide receivers. So is he gonna? I think you're gonna see a few times this year when he expresses his frustration on the sideline, as we've seen him do in the past, about not getting the volume that he wants.
So my favorite pick was kind of hard to come by. Looking at this, I didn't want to be, favorite pick CeeDee Lamb at 4, um, and maybe that's kind of I guess a preview of what grade I'm going to give her. I guess I'll just say my favorite pick here would be Devin Achan, just because of the talent that he has in the offense that he runs. At 50% carries that he had last year, he was explosive and fantasy dominant when he was on the field. So you can only expect that. Uh, what's his name in Miami? Oh gosh, it's not McDaniel's.
Mostert,
No, the coach.
McDaniel's,
No, it's not McDaniel.
Josh McDaniel,
No,
Josh McDaniel.
no, it's not.
Oh no, crap, Mike McDaniel.
Mike McDaniel, thank you. Mike
Yes.
McDaniel watched him last year. He's explosive. He should be more involved than he was last year. It's just Mostert's there. So I do like the talent there, and I agree with you with the running back situation that it was. That's the person you have to take if you are going to take one. So I guess that would be my least favorite or my favorite pick just based on the running back situation at that point. My least favorite pick is Stephon Diggs. Uh, Very crowded. You have Tank Dell, you have Nico Collins, now Diggs. You also have Dalton Schultz, who is going to command some targets. Um, I'm also a tiny bit concerned about a sophomore slump for CJ Stroud. I don't know if he's going to look the same as he did last year. I mean, he had a monster rookie season. It's fair to expect some regression there. So, he has a plethora of weapons. It's just, does Stephon Diggs get that week in and week out production to make Stephon Diggs her wide receiver 2 week in and week out? So did she give you a favorite and least favorite pick?
I don't think so, but again, I
Let me
did. By the
check.
way, did Scott text only you and not me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Scott.
Oh, Sarah texted me too.
Oh my God, I posted the freaking message.
Her favorite pick was Jalen Hurts. No reason given. And her least favorite was the Jets defense for some reason.
Oh, I love the Jets defense there. But
So
anyway, okay.
she doesn't like the Jets defense for some reason. I think they're going to be pretty good. So, and especially in
They
that
have a great.
division. Well, actually, not really, because the Bills and Miami have high explosive offense, but the Bills shouldn't be as explosive as they were in years past. And
Let me
New
let me
England is a dumpster fire. So,
let me tell you the first like 8 games for the Jets.
okay,
Okay, San Francisco tough. Okay, tough at the beginning, but then they go Tennessee, New England, Denver, Minnesota, Buffalo, good offense, Pittsburgh, New England. So that's the first 8 weeks for the Jets defense that should be pretty good. So you might stream 2 of those weeks, but the rest of them, those are dream matchups for the Jets.
okay. And then you said that your make or break was Stephon Diggs. I would say the same. In terms of my make or break, it's Devin Achan. Can't be
Yeah.
that really 50-50. Has to kind of pull himself away from Mostert, get that at least 60-40, maybe even 70-30 to really demand that draft capital of going at the end of the second round. So, grades. You go first.
I gave Sarah C plus,
Okay.
and you maybe expected by how I talked about her team that I might have gone lower, but at the end of the day, the first 5 players of her draft all play for explosive offenses. So that is one kind of thought in fantasy is you want good pieces of good offenses, and the Cowboys, the Dolphins, the Eagles, the Texans, and the Lions are some of the best offenses you can find. Dallas a little bit of question mark, but those other 4 are some of the best out there. So at the end of the day, you take your first 5 picks. They all play for elite, high-powered offenses. I like the talent to perform well in those systems.
I gave her a C minus, just because of the running back issues here. It doesn't have that true one running back that has all the carries. That's going to get all the opportunities. They're going to be sharing with, people that are maybe just as talented as them. So there's going to be some weeks, where Devin Achan or David Montgomery could maybe only see 10 touches in a game. And it's like, well, they have competent backups or, even at 1A type of players in the same backfield. So just think that it's very, very risky to go with your second round pick with Achan, just with some of the questions. No one's questioning his talent, but just with his opportunities that he's going to get. So I gave her a C minus. Good? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go over to the 5th pick this year. That would be Brian. I don't know what his new name is if you want to look that up real quick.
We've got the Cockeysville Cox.
The Cox. Big Cox. All right. So Brian went 7-7 last year. I gave him a B minus last year after his draft. You gave him a C plus. Maybe he'll get a little more love from you this year. But first 5 picks goes Jamar Chase, Josh Jacobs. I always want to call him Jonathan Jacobs for some reason. Deebo Samuel, Joe Mixon there in Houston, Amari Cooper, and then to round it out, Kyler Murray, Jake Ferguson, Brian Robinson, Christian Watson, Jerome Ford, Curtis Samuel, is it Jalen Wright? Yep, Jalen Wright. Fairbairn defense, Rashid Shaheed, and Ben Sennett rounding out there. So looking at here again, kind of balance goes wide receiver, running back, wide receiver to get that core going. How did that work out for Brian?
I think this was a masterclass in drafting.
I
I
agree.
think this was like I literally went 1 through 8, pick by pick, and just said, would I have taken that guy there? Yeah, yeah, I would. Like all of them. I mean, Chase threw Brian Robinson in the eighth.
Yeah,
All of them.
that's a steal. I mean, that's he should not have gotten to the eighth. Especially just talking about Sarah's team, could have picked him over George Pickens. I would have been okay with that in the sixth. To be honest with you.
Yeah. Sixth round, Kyler Murray, great
Yeah,
value.
yeah,
One, two, three, four, five, six, seven quarterbacks off the board. Kyler is perfect there. In round three to take Debo Samuel, I love it.
yep,
Allen and Hurts, and it's the first tight end and the first two quarterbacks go off the board in the three picks prior to have the sort of dedication and the wherewithal to not bite on that. And the next three after him were all quarterbacks. So to take Debo Samuel there, I love it. I
yeah,
I love it. Mixon we talked about in the fourth, sort of the end of the tier of running backs that I feel comfortable with. Perfect there. Amari Cooper before Zay Flowers, fine. Before Devontae Smith, probably in that same range. So I love that pick. I love it all. I love it all. I mean,
yeah.
there would have been some
Even Jake
decisions I would have
Ferguson right
made.
there. I mean,
Yes, end of a tier.
end of a tier.
Tight end 8 this year. I mean, I listened to a lot of the pundits and experts, so called, and a lot of people think Ferguson is sort of the end of the sort of the guys that you're comfortable starting as a tight end
Yeah.
in fantasy. So love it.
Okay, so what or I guess I'll go with my favorite and least favorite pick. My favorite pick here is Kyler Murray. There in the sixth round, he has the opportunity, I believe, to be a top three quarterback just with the rushing and throwing production. They have new weapons there in Arizona, fully healthy as it seems, off to a great start in preseason, things of that nature. So just with the rushing ability and his arm talent, I feel like that is an absolute steal. He is Matthew Berry's ride or die this year. So that is something to keep in mind. Kyler Murray, so he expects big things. I think that he has a great shot as ending a top three quarterback this year in Arizona. My least favorite, kind of nitpicking, because honestly I like the entire draft, but Christian Watson. Probably a couple wide
Yeah.
receivers after that I probably would. Cortland Sutton, Hollywood Brown, maybe even Mike Williams there in New York that you could have just waited, maybe got somebody else. Um, but like I said, that's after round 8, you're just taking kind of flyers at that point. So perfectly, if that was the one weakness there, I think he jumped a little bit at the name of Christian Watson and not really what he's produced in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I had to nitpick even further than that to find a pick that I really didn't like, and I really had a hard. I had NA written. I literally had NA
Oh, did
written,
you
and then
have
I
a
said, well,
catchphrase for him?
yeah, masterclass
Oh, masterclass.
specifically in tier drafting.
You're gonna
In
need to
tier
say this is
drafting,
his catchphrase because I keep on missing it.
okay. Well, I'll start. I'll start with that every time. I'll try to remember. But masterclass in tier drafting, taking the last guy of a tier, getting the value right at the end. You don't want to. I think you'd like to be at the end of a tier, not at the beginning or the middle of a tier. You'd like to take that value right before there's a drop off, and I think he did that really well. My least favorite pick was the Raiders, only because this is such a great team. If they had a elite top five defense, I think I would love it even more.
Yeah.
And my
Yeah, take a
favorite pick,
defense
I
before a
already.
kicker.
Right, yeah, exactly. I mean,
You could have got the
if I can have the
49ers.
49ers,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Or the
Yeah.
Cowboys or Browns, yeah, great defenses. So that's my only nitpick. My favorite pick was Debo Samuel there in the third. I really think he's set up for a huge year, especially if the Ayuk situation just continues to not look great. He's not happy there. They haven't been able to figure out if they can trade him. So I love Debo. If Ayuk's not out there, Um, and especially if, God forbid, especially for your sake, if McCaffrey goes down, Debo has been known to take some carries out of the backfield.
It's true.
So in the somewhat likely event that McCaffrey could, you know, have some injury issues, Debo becomes even that much more of a volume player for the 49ers.
For sure. So, let's just go over Brian's favorite picks before we go over the make or breaks. So, his favorite pick was actually Jalen Wright.
Hmm.
Jalen Wright. So, I guess he's the third running back there in Miami.
Yeah.
He's waiting for him to take over. He thinks he's going to take over as the season progresses. I'm sure Sarah or myself are not excited to hear that. And he doesn't have a least favorite pick. He likes all his picks.
Okay. He didn't even feel like nitpicking like we
No,
did. Okay.
no, we
Fair
got
enough.
to.
Fair
We're the
enough.
analysts. We got to nitpick a little bit.
Okay.
But let's go over the make or breaks. Did you want to go first on make or break?
I think did I say it? Maybe I didn't say it. Okay, yeah, Kyler Murray for me.
Okay.
And it's because if he can return the value that he got in this draft as like quarterback, what did I say? 8, 7, 8, 5, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Um, then I think it's solid. I mean, I as long as he does what he's drafted to do and is a top 10 quarterback, golden.
My make or break is Joe Mixon. Just as the second running back, he is 28, so getting a little older there, in a new situation there in Houston. Damian Pierce still there. We're not, I mean, not really too excited about him as we saw last year. Didn't do much. And Cam Akers is also there too. So
Hmm.
just a name that just kind of keep an eye on. Is Joe Mixon going to command the carries like he did in Cincinnati? With some more competition here in Houston, and the ball's going to be spread around. I think that the Houston's going to be more pass happy than even Cincinnati was, and Cincinnati was pretty pass happy. Uh, when Burrow does play. So just a new situation, kind of unknown how his usage is going to be. You kind of had an idea about his usage in Cincinnati just because he's been there his entire career. So just a little bit of unknowns there. I think as if he continues to be the same player that he's been in Cincinnati, I think it's completely fine. But if any drop off, then you have to start thinking about, is Brian Robinson going to be the better play week in and week out? If Cam Akers, Damian Pierce are nibbling at his opportunities to carry the football. Okay, so let's give grades. You want me to go first? I'll go first. I gave him an A.
Sure.
I gave him an A. I mean, great. I mean, Jamar Chase, Jacobs now is even a better value with AJ Dillon being out for the year, and even his backup, AJ Dillon's backup, is also banged up. I mean, they're going to run that man into the ground. He's going to get so much opportunities, and that's the one thing you look for in your first running back is how much is he going to touch the football. You can only score points in fantasy football if you touch the football. This is Fantasy Masterclass 101 by Adam Jackson here. You can only score fantasy points if you touch the ball. He's going to be touching the ball a lot this year. So I just love this draft, and I love it even more now with the AJ Dillon news. Just like we've been heaping the praise all the show with Brian's team, that just completely solid, really through 1 through 8, rounds 1 through 8.
What was the highest grade we gave last year? Do you have that handy?
Yeah, an A. You gave me an A last year.
I gave you an A. And I
Yep,
was right about that
you were right about that.
in a big way. I'm gonna, dare I say, I'm gonna
Oh,
go an A plus to you.
wow, the
I'm
A
gonna add
plus.
that plus.
I think that's the first A plus we've
I
ever
just
given. I think.
well that's yeah, I don't know how many years we've been doing draft grades. I think we skipped it for a year, but I exactly what you said. I mean, those top eight, I love it. Waiting on quarterback and running back. I'm sorry, waiting on quarterback and tight end, getting the end of the tier. Love the mix, the balance at the top, going wide receiver, running back, wide receiver, running back, wide receiver. I love it. Perfect.
I
Chef's
completely
kiss.
agree. Yeah, very amazing draft. Just looking, I mean, we've been looking at it for the past couple days, and we came to the same conclusions. Just overall, just very impressive draft. Drafting out of a spot that's can be kind of difficult. That fifth hole, right kind of in the middle there. So you're not really bookend. You're not really at that. I like to be around like 9, but so very impressive for Brian. But let's go over to Dustin, right in the middle here at number 6. What's Dustin's name? Oh, he's the Pink Pony Club, isn't he?
Yes.
The Pink Pony Club. They're
Is
kind
it
of doing,
Pikesville? Pikesville.
yeah, kind of going after the kind of soccer theme. I know he's gonna love that. Doing a club instead of a football team, I guess you could say. But going over to his record last year, he was 8-6, and last year I gave him an A-, and you gave him an A- as well. So pretty high draft grades for Dustin last year. First 5 picks starts off with Justin Jefferson, Drake London in the second, Lamar in the third, Kenneth Walker in the fourth, and to round out the 5 is DeAndre Swift. Finishing off goes Ramondre Stevenson, Keenan Allen, Brock Bowers, Hollywood Brown, Cortland Sutton, Dalton Schultz, Baltimore's defense, Jake Moody, Aaron Rodgers, I think it's Michael Lloyd. I don't know exactly. Marshawn
No.
Lloyd. That's that
Yeah.
backup running back for
Yep.
Josh Jacobs, and Braylon Allen for the Jets running back there as well. So looking at his board, he is the second team to go wide receiver. How did that work out for Dustin?
Mixed results for me.
Okay.
I think the catchphrase this is the
Okay,
catchphrase,
thank
right?
you.
Ready?
I'm kind of
It's
slow.
not a great one. I mean, it's kind of so solid starters, questionable depth. I think he's got a starting lineup of guys that you can get by with that should be serviceable, should be decently good. I think there's questions for me with the depth of this team. So, as you said, starts out wide receiver, just one of 2 teams to do that to begin the draft. So, Jefferson and London. Um, bites did what Brian did not do, which is bite on the quarterback with his beloved Lamar Jackson. I mean, he's no Joe Flacco, according to Dustin, but he I guess is worth a 3rd-round pick for Dustin here. Then goes Kenneth Walker, Swift, and Stevenson to build out that running back core. The questionable depth that I'm looking at, I mean, Keenan Allen as a wide receiver
3.
3, kind of in a new situation, aging,
Fat,
similar to
apparently.
Eckler, leaves the Chargers. Yeah, gained some weight.
Haven't we
In
all
a
in our old age?
questionable. I, yeah, I mean Caleb Williams. Look, if Caleb Williams is great, he's going to need some reliable pass catchers. So I don't know. Maybe he's a volume guy like Derek Mason at the end of his career when he's just a possession receiver. He has been that for a very long time. So maybe I like him a little bit more in a PPR league. Maybe. Um, Hollywood Brown, again, just not a guy that I'm too excited about. I keep having to double take because I'm not looking for him to be Hollywood. I'm not looking for H Brown. I'm like, who's H Brown?
Right.
Um, but he is Hollywood Brown, and he is a 9th-round pick here for Dustin. And then Cortland Sutton, I like him. I don't see a lot of depth there. I don't see a lot of guys that I feel really good about throwing into the lineup. Brock Bowers, rookie tight end. I think from previous years how I feel about rookie tight ends. I'm kind of down on him. The Raiders like him, I think. He's a little bit banged up with a foot injury. So that is actually a questionable starter, not just questionable depth, but questionable starter. Does go get the Ravens defense. I love that. But I don't know. I just feel a little bit like it's top heavy.
Yeah, I mean, starting off with Justin Jefferson, Drake London, I'm completely fine with that. Lamar in the third. I mean, would
Yeah.
you rather have a James Cook? You know, would you? He takes Kenneth Walker. Would you rather have an Alvin Kamara there? It's kind of a question there. Um, could you just wait on quarterbacks? Um, I'm with you on Brock Bowers, rookie tight ends. Not a great track record. Really struggle to try to figure out how to catch the ball and block, and there's a lot of assignments for rookie tight ends to try to figure out. Um, like you said, very top heavy. Kenneth Walker, I'm a believer in Kenneth Walker.
Me
Justin
too.
Jefferson and Drake London, completely fine. Ramondre Stevenson, he is the starter, but it's a bad offense. It's going to be pretty bad. They
Yeah.
might be the worst offense in the league this year. So he's going to get the opportunity. It's just what does he do with that opportunity? Is Jacoby Brissett really going to look for him like Mac Jones did out of the backfield, and all the carousel of starting quarterbacks they had in New England last year? So I do like your analysis, kind of top heavy, and then really from rounds 5 through 10, it's just like question mark, question mark. I like Hollywood Brown's
Yeah.
situation, but he's hurt, and he's always kind of hurt. So it's just a lot of question marks. A lot of people in new situations. Swift, new situation. Keenan Allen, new situation. Brock Bowers, new situation because he's a rookie. Hollywood Brown, new situation. Things like that. So just a lot of unknowns in that middle where you probably could have got better solid value from players around where these players were taken. So let's go with your favorite and least favorite picks.
And by the way, we do have Dustin's commentary here, but as far as I go,
Yeah.
Kenneth Walker, you just mentioned him. I am also high on Ken Walker. I like him probably better than Kamara, who went 4 spots before that. This is a point in the draft, again, we talked about it's just before the tier drop down to Connor, right before Mixon. So I like Ken Walker there a lot in the 4th round. I think he's perfectly capable. If you dedicate your first 3 picks to other positions, I'm perfectly comfortable going Walker. And I do like that he did, realize that he went wide receivers and a quarterback in the top 3, and then tried to fill that gap with 3 running backs in a row. You're right. Question marks a little bit. Swift, I like. Stevenson, definitely a question mark there. So, but my favorite pick here is Ken Walker.
Okay.
Least favorite
Yep.
is I think it's Drake London there
Oh, okay.
in the 2nd. Only
Okay.
because, look, I think the value is okay. I just am not a same reason. The Olave Drake London, I mentioned it earlier in the show. Just 2 guys that I'm just kind of I don't feel great about. I have a weird feeling. Cousins obviously now the quarterback there. Maybe that is an upgrade for him, but we haven't seen it yet from him consistently enough. So to spend a 2nd rounder on him, I kind of feel like he just profiles more this year as a 3rd rounder, but just so happens to fall in that kind of middle of the 2nd range here. If he would have gone Marvin Harrison, even though he's even less proven because he's a rookie, I just think the talent of Harrison there is too good to pass up, like Dustin did.
Okay. So I will go with my least favorite pick first. My least favorite pick is Keenan Allen. They're in the 7th. New situation. You can't go by track record. He doesn't have Justin Herbert throwing him the ball, force feeding him the ball. You now have Caleb Williams. Who knows how he's going to look? All the reports show that he's looked great in practice and preseason, but a lot of unknowns. And there's a lot of mouths to feed. You still have DJ Moore there. You have the rookie. I don't know what his name is, but a 1st round draft pick rookie there. And you still have Cole Kmet there as well. Caleb, Williams is going to run the ball a little more than the other quarterbacks who were there previously. So just where's the opportunity? And then you hear about the things where he's out of shape, he's older now. What does that look like? Is he really going to be? He could. I mean, there is a situation where he could be the 3rd option on that team. I mean, that could happen. And, drafting a 3rd option in the 7th round is not conducive to success, I would say. So that's just my least favorite pick in terms of Dustin's team. My favorite pick out of Dustin's team is Drake London. I like Drake London here. There's a couple things you have to know about Drake London. One, he's not going to have Desmond Ridder, Marcus Mariota throwing him the ball anymore. He has a professional quarterback throwing him the ball now in Kirk Cousins. Yes, he's old. He doesn't move well, but he has proven to elevate the players and the pass catchers that he's involved with. Secondly, Arthur Smith isn't there anymore. Thank God Arthur Smith is not there in Atlanta anymore. It's Raheem Morris, I think, is the new coach there. And more importantly, the offensive coordinator there is Cam Robinson, who was the passing game coordinator for the LA Rams. Very good passing offense there. I expect big things out of Drake London. I expect better things out of Kyle Pitts, who we might talk about a little bit later. I just think the talent is there. I just think he was mismanaged throughout his entire career thus far. Um, Remember, he was drafted before Garrett Wilson in the same draft. So the talent is definitely there. I just think that the opportunities, play calling, game script, uh, lack of quarterback play all fed into him being a disappointment thus far. I expect a big year out of Drake London this year.
Okay, so this is really fascinating. So not only is my least favorite pick your favorite pick, it Dustin's least favorite pick is also Drake London.
Okay.
So he says where well first of all, least favorite, he says, well, where to begin? So I don't know if that says anything about how Dustin feels about his team. But it's Drake London for him. He says he wanted one of the 6 running backs taken in the 7 spots before him. He wasn't sold on Josh Jacobs or Achan, who went right after. So he went wide receiver,
I bet
wide
you if he was
receiver.
drafting now, he'd take Drake, Josh Jacobs.
Why now? Oh, yeah, with
With
given the
AJ
injuries
Dillon's
behind him,
gone.
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so he acknowledges that he had to stock up on on meh running backs after, which feels very uninspiring. We kind of talked about that a little bit. I think he did a decent job with Walker and Swift, but
Yeah.
you know,
And
so
even
yeah,
Stevenson. You have to throw Stevenson in that mix as well.
yeah, well,
He's the
yeah.
guy there. He is the guy. So it's like, it's kind of one of
Oh,
these things where it's like, you know, uh, White in the second round. You're getting a guy that's uninspiring, but he's going to get all the looks.
yeah,
So,
that's true. That's true. And to make things even more interesting here, your least favorite pick was Dustin's favorite pick.
okay.
So Keenan Allen, he knows he's old, knows he's on a new team, and supposedly fat and slow, but he's been so consistent for so long. Dustin thinks that he was a good value in the later rounds. I don't know if 7 is a later round, but sure. So there you go.
Okay. Very good. Did we do make or breaks?
We did not.
Okay, let's do make or
And
breaks.
I'm going off the board here because I want to talk about a guy that we really haven't talked about, but is kind of important, is Justin Jefferson
Okay.
at the first pick there as number 6 overall. Um, the quarterback is an issue. We know he's going to get volume. It's not a PPR league; it's a half point PPR league. So his volume, the value of his volume is a little bit capped. He's still a great player. I think they're still going to get the ball to him, but it is risky. And if he's no good, do I trust? If that situation just turns terrible for Minnesota, do I trust your Drake London to be my one? Clearly not. You might. I don't. And so I just think that would put Keenan Allen into the 2 spot. So Justin Jefferson to me is the make or break.
And I'm going to go with my make or break as Drake London, just because he's unproven. I do think he's in for a big year, but like you said before, it's unproven. He hasn't done it yet, except for a little bit in his rookie season. Um, I just think there are big days ahead for him, but I do think that that is the most important player he drafted to make his whole team work.
Okay. Grades, right?
Grades. You want to go first?
I'm gonna I'm gonna give him a B minus here.
And that's what I gave him,
I
a B minus.
A B minus. So like I said at the very beginning, I think his starters are solid enough. I didn't say great. I said solid.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the depth is a question mark. So I kind of averaged it out, and it sort of spit out a B minus for me.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of in kind of the same boat. I was kind of flip flopping between my least favorite pick of Bowers or Allen. Bowers, I just think went way too soon. Goddard, I'd rather have Njoku. I'd rather have. I'd probably rather have Dalton Schultz, to be honest with you, which is kind of crazy. So, I mean, he did end up getting him, but I think that that's a hole there. At who is he going to start at tight end? I think he's going to have a decision each week. He put eighth round draft capital in Bowers. Does that make him trust him to start him more just because he drafted him 4 rounds ahead of Dalton Schultz, at least beginning? And so, I think that's just going to be a decision that he has to make where it's, you put this draft capital in him. Are you going to start him, and is he going to perform? Like you said, starters are fine, solid, but an injury to one or two of these top eight, there's going to be problems. There's not a lot behind them to really inspire confidence. Okay, so let's go over to Tom here. Tom was the second team to draft 2 running backs in a row, but let's go to last year. Tom went 5-9 last year. Last year, I gave him a B. You gave him a B plus. But with his first 5 picks, starts with Breece Hall, the wonder kid here, flying up draft boards. He gets them at 7. Travis Etienne in the second. Pat Mahomes in the third. DJ Metcalf in the fourth. And to round out the top 5, Mark Andrews. Rest of his board is T. Higgins, Xavier Worthy, Gus Edwards, Brian Thompson Jr. I think it's Trey Benson. Trey Benson, Brandon Aubrey, Justin Herbert. 49ers defense, Jalen Polk, Gabe Davis, and Luke Musgrave to round out the rest of his team. He's the second team here to go running back after Scott. Roommates, and maybe they were talking about how the importance of running backs were in their own household. Starts running back, doesn't pick his first wide receiver till round 4. How do you think that that in and of itself affected the rest of his draft?
What, going running back?
Well, just going his first wide receiver at 4 in round 4.
I like how he did it. I think it worked for him because I like the guys that he filled in with. I like Metcalf and Higgins at their values. I think they're two of my favorite players in his draft. I think both of them represented really good value. Metcalf there, I think, represents a tier drop off after him. I like that he is the guy probably there in Seattle still. I think he hasn't quite reached his full potential there, and I could see that happening. I could see him really breaking out this year. He's shown that he can be consistent for extended periods of time. Generally, I just look for him to do it over the course of a season, and I really like him there. So my kind of theme for Tom's team was potential to pop. Because again, the upside of a lot of these players.
You had it so easy. You had popping bottles just sitting right there, and you didn't do it.
I had what?
Potential to pop bottles. You could have just said that. That would have been a better catchphrase.
Okay, well then you're going to write them next year then. But potential to pop. Look, Tom is really good at having an eye for young talent in coming into the league. I feel like every year he takes shots on rookies, and he's done it in several players here, in Trey Benson, in Brian Thomas, and in Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy is a little bit rich for my blood where he took him. He is in that offense with Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown, as well as Pacheco, as well as Kelsey. So can he carve out enough of a role to justify being a wide receiver 3? Maybe, but he definitely has the potential to do it. He's very talented. Brian Thomas, same thing. I think he may have a little bit more likelihood to succeed and flash in Jacksonville, potential to become the number 2, maybe in that offense behind Christian Kirk. So I like that Tom took shots at guys. We already talked about Metcalf. Breece Hall can continue his dominance. I just think he's got a lot of names on here that could explode and put Tom over the top this year.
Yeah, I mean, he does that a lot in previous drafts where he tries to find the diamonds in the rough, and then, you look at the end of the season, they're, top 20, top 15 players, and you're like, where the hell did this person come from? So definitely a good point there for Tom. But just looking at his board,
I didn't even mention Jalen Polk. That's the other one, too. In the 15th, 14th round, could be. Now, I think we did get bad news there that I think Jacoby Brissett has won that job, and Polk had really good chemistry with Drake May. So inevitably Drake May is going to take over, and Polk could be a name to keep an eye out. I love that in the 14th round.
Yeah, but just my comments kind of on Tom's team. Obviously you love the running backs, the first 2, Breece Hall, Travis Etienne. I've never been a huge fan of DK Metcalf. I feel like he kind of disappears at times um, in that Seattle offense. You you're expecting Jack Smith and Jigba to take on of a more uh, I wouldn't say dominant role, but he's going to make his name known. It seems like they really like him out of Seattle camp. How is that going to work out between him, Lockett, and Smith and Jigba? Does that cut down on his targets at all? Worthy, stuck behind a couple people. You know what I mean? Um, the Chief. I don't know if this really affects him at all, but they just signed Juju Schuster. He had a great season the one year he was with Patrick Mahomes. I had him on my fantasy team. So, how does he fit in? Would they go out and sign Juju Smith-Schuster if they were confident in Worthy's abilities and grasping a very intense offense at this point? That's kind of a question mark there. So, he took stabs. I think that this is Tom's one of the teams that really took the most chances, I would say. Starting from fourth through the last round. I think there was just a lot of just like home run or pop fly kind of thing, where it's like best case scenario, these all hit, and it's just like they came out of nowhere, and we're talking about him popping bottles at the end of the season. But the other side of the coin is if they are just rookies this year and don't produce, it's he's not going to have a lot of depth, and he's going to struggle trying to find people to start. But let's go with favorite and least favorite. Did you want to start that off?
Yeah, favorite for me. Let me see here. Actually, it was one of the guys I highlighted earlier, which is Brian Thomas with
Okay.
Jacksonville. He's had a really good preseason. Um, he's made some really electric catches. He's looked really good from what I hear. I haven't watched Jacksonville preseason,
Oh,
but
you haven't watched
everything I hear is
Jacksonville preseason football? I mean, what are you
no,
doing?
I
I
haven't
gave
even
you
watched.
homework. I mean, come on.
Yeah. No, I haven't. I hate preseason.
Yeah.
I don't even watch the Ravens
No, I
preseason, to be
don't
honest
either.
with you.
I don't either.
But he's really looked good from what I hear. He's very athletic on the field. Rookie wide receiver for Jacksonville, and an offense that I feel like he could get up to the Christian Kirk level, which I mentioned earlier. My least favorite pick, you talked about it, I talked about it, Xavier Worthy. It's just a little bit too soon for that one.
Yes.
I kind of think, those rookie wide receivers that are supremely talented, like Thomas, who we got 2 rounds later, that's kind of more the 9-10 range that I'd like to see those guys go. Um,
I think
I
right
don't know
now
what
you'd
his
rather
ADP
take
was.
Brian Thomas over Worthy right now, which is kind
Agreed.
of weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just in turn, I'll start with my least favorite pick. That would be Worthy as well. Rather have Calvin Ridley, just the solidness, to win 2 picks later.
Yes.
Um,
Yep.
Looking at, I'd rather have Deontay Johnson, to be honest with you. He's the only guy there in Carolina. He's apparently a very focal point in that offense. Um, just get more. You can take your stabs, but he just reached on that stab a little too much for my liking. Not saying I don't like the player. I'm just saying I don't like where he was picked. Is
Chris Godwin. Would you have taken Chris
yes,
Godwin?
probably. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So Addison, I probably wouldn't. That's probably like the line. But I would have
Mm.
taken Deontay Johnson over him as well.
Yeah.
My favorite pick is Travis Etienne. I
Mm.
like him better than Gibbs. I like him better than Henry. Actually, I think he's on the level of Isaiah Pacheco. I really think that he's has a firm grasp on that job. There's no one really behind him. Tank Bigsby, but that experiment didn't really go anywhere last year. He's going to be extremely involved. He's going to be a bell cow. It's going to be a good offense. Trevor Lawrence has to be better than what he was last year, so they should be able to push the ball down the field more. Christian Kirk going back to the slot. That's only going to help open things up, clear the box out for Travis Etienne, who's very elusive, very speedy, can catch the ball in the backfield. He does everything that you want out of a running back, really out of your first running back, and he's Tom's second. So good on him there for recognizing that talent and taking him in the second round.
All right. I know that so Tom did give us kind of a breakdown of his favorites and least favorites. Um, his favorite is DK Metcalf. He
Okay.
thinks Lockett is going to fall off a bit, and JSN will take over Lockett's role. With that being said, he thinks DK will be the main possession receiver and will rack up receptions. I tend to agree with that.
Okay.
Um, his least favorite was T. Higgins. Even with losing Boyd, he's going to be boomer bust. Would be better in non PPR, but here we are.
Okay. So down to make or breaks now. My make or break is T. Higgins, actually. So, a couple years ago, he was a very viable wide receiver too in that high flying Cincinnati offense. How much is that affected by Joe Burrow being hurt and injured last year? I mean, that has to affect it somewhat. Um, he needs to get back to that, wide receiver within the top 20 to really justify this pick. Um, be more consistent. He's shown that in the past, so that's a good news. He does have a track record of being a very talented wide receiver. It's just with the way that Tom's draft board went, he really needs him to get back to form.
I'm on the same page. He's my make or break as well. And I've never been a big Higgins guy. Maybe it was because it was an offense that used Mixon a lot, that had Tyler Boyd, sort of had three guys in that offense that all needed targets, and Higgins was never a guy for me. This year, I like him in the sixth. I think he's a good value in the sixth, but he definitely is as the number two wide receiver. I agree. He's the make or break here.
Okay, and let's go to grades now. Did you want to give your grade for Tom here?
Yeah, I mean, I really like what he did. Not quite as much as Brian's team, but I gave him an A.
Whew. Okay. Um, as you were talking, I wanted to give him a higher grade. I was like, okay, like I can see what you're saying.
You could change it. I adjusted one or two based on discussion.
Yeah, but am I gonna deny my previous self and my gut?
Okay, let's do it.
I gave him a C plus, um,
Ooh, okay.
just because Higgins, he needs to prove it. DK Metcalf, I'm always kind of down on. He kind of proves me wrong. Patrick Mahomes, I mean, last year
I know.
it wasn't great. QB 8.
It wasn't.
So
Wasn't.
like
Yeah.
he needs to get better there. And then just, Worthy, Edwards, Brian Thomas, haven't seen it. You know, Edwards is with Dobbins. Trey Benson, that's kind of a head scratcher to me. Picking a kicker at 11, I don't like that at all. Um, you know, just a lot of too many dart throws in my opinion. But I will say that this is one of the teams that I feel like could win 3 games or 11 games if everything goes right. I feel like this is one of the biggest variants in terms of success versus disappointment in the Beltway Wars Invitational.
Is Mark Andrews another make or break player here? I kind of feel like he is. Like if he is a top three tight end, four tight end, versus if
But
he
I
gets
feel like
hurt,
that's where
which
he's expected to be, if that makes
if he
sense.
stays healthy, if he stays
Correct.
healthy.
But it's like where Tom's drafting him to be a wide receiver two, and he wasn't a wide receiver
Yeah.
two last year. So like that's where I kind of feel with like make or break. Um, so, but yeah, let's go over.
Okay, that'll be one to follow
Yes, for
throughout the
sure.
year.
I'm sure I'm going to hear it from Tom, but that's fine. Let's go over to one of the more interesting teams drafted this year. That would be Alex. He was very vocal in the Discord about his displeasure of people sniping players from him before he picks them. Last year, uh, Alex went 3-11, so not very good last year. I gave him a B minus last year. You gave him a C plus, so good for you, Pat, for nailing that one. But let's go to the first 5 picks as we have been doing. Amon-Ra St. Brown, stud, plays in a dome most of the season. You gotta love that he gets to 8 there. Jahmyr Gibbs in the second, goes C.J. Stroud in the third, DJ Moore in the fourth, Zay Flowers in the fifth. Rounding out his team, Tank Dell, Nick Chubb, who's going to be out at least the first 4 games, probably longer than that. I would say probably about week 7 is probably where he's kind of projected to come back. David Njoku, Ezekiel Elliott, Dallas Goedert, Justin Tucker, Antonio Gibson, Dallas's defense, Matthew Stafford, Darrell Mooney, and then Demario Douglas.
Yep.
Yeah, Demario Douglas. So, goes wide receiver, running back, quarterback. The only other team to have done that is Sarah. So, goes with Amon-Ra, Gibbs, and Stroud. Going quarterback is always kind of risky within the first 5 rounds, at least in my opinion. Getting the 5th one in the 3rd round is kind of scary to me. Do you feel the same kind of reservations there?
Sorry, say that again.
Getting the 5th quarterback off the board in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
Do you have reservations about that?
I do. Yeah, I absolutely do. I mean, that's boy, Stroud, and a lot of people. I think if you ask, I mean, he may not even be in the top 5 in quarterbacks. He may not even be in the top 7 for some
Yeah.
people. Um, he looked great last year, but he is kind of still young and still kind of coming up. Obviously, that offense has the potential to be very potent. A lot of great pass catchers. Um, I agree. It feels early. It feels really early.
And I think that's kind of a microcosm of Alex's draft. It was like panic. He sees quarterbacks going off. He wants to get one of those top flight ones. He picks one. Then he sees all the running backs going. He takes Nick Chubb, who's gonna very talented, but it's gonna be out the first 4 to 6 weeks. So I think if you had a catchphrase for Alex, I think it would be panic, panic, panic. Go ahead. What was your catchphrase for Alex's draft?
It was that the running backs look rough, rough, really rough. I mean,
Like
boy, uh,
rough.
yeah, like 5 alarm panic. I
Yeah,
mean, we talked earlier about Montgomery and how risky, not risky, but just the fact that his upside could be capped a little bit by having a Jahmyr Gibbs. Well, it works in reverse order as well.
for
Jahmyr
sure.
Gibbs making him your running back 1 and not taking another one until the 7th, who's going to miss at least part of the season. There's no guarantee based on the injuries. Remember, when Chubb got hurt, like I like Chubb as a pick. I like him there. I was going to take him there if he fell to me the next pick. But man, like when he got hurt and we realized that that was the second time that he tore that same ACL, I think, right? It wasn't
I
the
think it
same
was the
leg that
different.
he's
I
torn
think it was a
twice.
different one, which is maybe
Different
even
leg that,
worse, to be honest.
right. Exactly. So
And they were
like
talking about
when that
him
happened,
maybe never playing again
right.
after that.
That's exactly my point.
Yeah.
So it's no guarantee that he's going to be back. I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't a full year recovery. I mean, he's recovering well from by all reports, but like there's a question mark there that he even comes back, and what is he
Right.
going to be when he's what are the Browns going to be? What is Jerome Ford going to be? Remember, Jerome Ford was still used in that offense even when Chubb was healthy. So
Hmm.
Ezekiel Elliott, they just signed Dalvin Cook. They've already got a couple names there and Gibson. So just similar to Mike's situation with running back, just I'm worried about some of the age and health of some of these guys and just the depth of this team.
Yeah. I mean, you have Gibbs. You're not denying the talent. The talent is there. He's very talented. It's just the situation he's in. If you put, let's see, if you put Gibbs on, I don't know. Let's think of a team here. If you put Gibbs on, I'm trying to think of like a team that is like the Giants. Let's say you put Gibbs on the Giants. He's
Yeah.
a he's in the first round of picks. I believe I'd pick him if he was on the Giants. I'd pick him over Saquon for sure. Just the talent is amazing, and he'd be a vocal point of that
Yeah.
offense.
Yeah.
So, but that's not the situation he's in. David Montgomery's still there. He's still going to get his looks. He's still going to get his red zone carries. Your second running back is Nick Chubb, as we just mentioned. They're expecting him to play this year, but there was at a point where he may have never played football ever again. And then his next running back, and he could have picked Jerome Ford. He passed on him twice. He passed on him twice.
Yeah.
He picks Ezekiel Elliott, the corpse of Ezekiel Elliott, now back in Dallas. And then he rounds out his running back with the uninspiring Antonio Gibson. I know you were a fan of him in the past, but he is a shell
Yeah.
of what his use is going to be. He is the second option at running back on a horrible NFL offense. So just a dart throw there. But even looking at the wide receivers, Tank Dell, third option on a Houston team, Zay Flowers, they're going to hand Derrick Henry the ball. They really like to do that, establish the run. Mark Andrews is going to get his looks. I expect a tiny bit of a resurgence from Rashad Bateman. I feel like he was a lot more open than Lamar got him the ball last year. So I think that, he's going to cut into some of it. Zay Flowers is still a good player. But what is the opportunities going to be? Is the Ravens really going to be that pass happy with Derrick Henry back there? I don't know. DJ Moore, another thing. You have Keenan Allen there. He's probably the best wide receiver they have, but it's just the competition. How many times is he going to see the ball consistently week in and week out? I think that's a fair question. Amon-Ra, obviously, perfectly fine there. But after Amon-Ra, it's just question marks. It's question mark after question mark. And I'm just really concerned about this team, but we'll get into that with the grade. So what was your least favorite and favorite pick here? Let's start with the least favorite because I feel like you have some competition there.
Least favorite, we talked about it earlier, was Stroud.
Yep.
It's just too soon, and the way the rest of the draft panned out for him, he would have been so much better had he taken a James Cook who went after, or Kamara, or a Walker, in that range. As you said, sort of bid on the quarterback as the run was happening, and sort of kind of panic pick that. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't want to take too much away. Maybe he just really loves Stroud, and that's fair. And Stroud was good last year, but for me, yeah, it's a little bit early.
Okay, and what was your favorite pick?
Favorite pick was Chubb, just
Okay.
because I again I was going to take him with the next pick. He's not a running back too. I can't fault you for picking him where you got him. I would have taken a running back or two ahead of him in earlier rounds in the 4, 5, 6 range. But I love the possibility of him, coming back and becoming great. I mean, he still is a great player. He's not all that old, right? He's been good, but how old is he? Oh, he is in his 28 season. So
And two
I
ACLs.
like the risk there. Yeah, I do like the risk
It
there.
is. I mean, when you're getting to like the 7 through 10, that's about where you can take a risk if you have two starting Bill Cow running backs, is what I would say. If you have the
Right.
two established starting running backs, that's perfectly fine to take a shot on Nick Chubb, and then hopefully you get a running back that can finish in the top 10 very easily for points per game.
And well, so say he does that, and we can put this we can wait to talk about this more when we give draft grades. But when we give draft grades, I want you to give a grade what you think it is now, and assuming that Chubb comes back in week 5, and within a week or 2 or 3 is
back to his
Nick
old
Chubb.
self. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
because I think it really just does change the way I would
Well,
think
for
about this team.
sure. Um,
Yeah.
I would say my favorite pick here is Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm a huge fan of him. I had him last year. I know. Well, it's a first round pick for sure, but um, I like where he got him. I'm glad he didn't go after one of these running backs that went at the tail end of the first round. Top 5 ability, could very well be the number 1 wide receiver. He has that ability. He has that talent, especially in that offense. Especially, I think it's like 15 out of 18 games is in a dome. So just track star the entire
Mhm.
time. Probably falls a little farther than what he thought Amon-Ra St. Brown would be. I saw him going in, 5, 6. So good on him getting there. My least favorite pick is not because of the player itself, but just because of where he's picked and the needs that Alex has. So that would be Zay Flowers in the 5th.
Yeah.
Looking at here, I would have been fine with him taking Kittle, Harris, Kincaid, Ramondre Stevenson, even Pollard there instead of Zay Flowers, just based on his need. He waited on tight end. He waited on running back. Those are all players I would have rather had ahead of your wide receiver 3 on your team. So I did,
Right.
and then if you pick one of those, then you can pick Tank Dell there. I mean, of course you don't know this, but you see the players on the board that are going, that you have on your board. You can pick any one of those. I mean, we were I think we were talking, after the draft about Kittle. We were kind of shocked at how good he was actually last year. Maybe I was dreaming that, or yeah, he was tight end number 2 last year. So,
Yeah.
I mean, he has a track record. Brandon
Yeah.
Ayuk should be gone, so he should get more targets and things like that. So, I just think Zay Flowers was too, maybe not a reach there, but there was just so much more blatant needs for this team to take your third wide receiver around 5.
Agreed, for sure. Can I ask you a question though that I kind of when I was reviewing this team, I kind of thought, well, that's interesting, and I don't know if I love it. How do you feel about the top 2 picks playing for the same team?
I That's a great question. I try to avoid it when I can,
Yeah, me too.
which is why I might have faded Debo a little bit when I took Mike Evans, because I could have taken Debo there, but then I would have McCaffrey and Debo, and if that whole offense falls apart, then you're kind of really in trouble. I'm
Right.
fine with it. I guess I would have rather had ETN over Gibbs. I think that would have been a better kind of strategy there. Even
Agreed.
even Josh Jacobs maybe over
Agreed.
Gibbs there. Just those bell cows that are guaranteed to get touches. You can't score if you're not on the field, and he's not going to be on the field at least 50% of the time. At least of what we saw last year. Maybe it changes. Maybe Alex knows something we don't. But just the way that it was looking last year was a 50-50 split. But yeah, so I try to avoid it when I can. Did he have a
Yep.
favorite and least favorite pick?
I again did not see it, so
Let
you should
me
check. But
see. He texted me.
I,
Oh, yes, he texted me.
what is going on?
Okay, so his favorite pick, he didn't give much elaboration, but he said his favorite pick was St. Brown, so Amon Ra.
Yep.
Probably not expecting him to get there. And then his hated pick was Zeke. So he did not like the pick of Ezekiel Elliott, which I kind of agree with as well. But at this point
Yeah.
in your draft, when your top running backs are that, you got to take a stab at least someone that's going to get the work early in the season. So
Yep.
beggars cannot be choosers. What is your make or break here?
It's sort of 2 guys, and I think you already alluded to this, and you probably might agree on this. DJ Moore and Zay Flowers.
Okay, so you picked 2.
I I did.
Okay.
Because they're kind of the same. They're kind of the same guy on this team, right? Like if one of them steps up and it can serve as a wide receiver 2, great. But you mentioned the question marks for both of those players. I totally agree with that. And look, Dell is a good fourth. I would have picked somebody else there. I totally agree. Get another running back. Get Zamir White. Get Ramondre Stevenson there instead of Tank Dell. He great, although he is a great wide receiver 4. Potential to pop, just like Tom's entire team. But Moore and Flowers are just too much of a question mark. And if one of them or both of them happens to be great, we're talking about a whole different team. But too many question marks for both of those players. Too many question marks in Chicago's offense for me. Caleb Williams, lots of talent, but are they going to be on the same page right away? Moore has been known to be very inconsistent. He's sort of a Jekyll and Hyde from year to year in fantasy football. So I have a little bit of trouble there in the 4 and 5 rounds.
Yeah, I agree with you where you can take those kind of risky picks, but it's got to be later in the draft. It's got to be later. You can't in your first 5 picks. It's got to be as solid as you can. At least that's my general thinking is in terms of draft strategy. My make or break is Jahmyr Gibbs. He needs him to be. He needs to be, 70-30 this year. I would say from Montgomery to him playing 70% of the time. So he can't have him at 50-50 or even David Montgomery outplaying him at parts of the season. He needs him to be a rock star, top 10, maybe even like top 8 running back this year, which he's capable of doing. It's just, does he have the opportunities to do that? So, grades. You want me to go first on grades?
Sure.
I gave Alex a D minus.
Okay, you got real.
I got real.
That's pretty real. That's pretty
But
real.
let's do it like you said. So let's assume Chubb comes back
Yeah.
effective. Maybe not as effective as his heyday years, but starting bell cow running back. So I would
Yeah,
say
80% of what he.
so I would say like if he comes back as Joe Mixon, I think that's a fair comparison.
Okay.
I would say I'd give him a C at that point.
Okay.
So it really depends on Chubb, I would say. So maybe that he should have been my
Right.
make or break, to be honest with you.
Now do that again and assume that Moore or Flowers, that one of those two performs like a wide receiver
Well, I
two.
mean, we can
Is a
play this
top.
game all day. I mean, I don't think they
Sure.
will.
Yeah, we
That's the
could.
point.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. A
All
B
right.
minus, I
Well,
guess. I mean, I don't know. Like,
all
I don't
right.
think they
Well,
will. I don't know.
I don't think either of those things are terribly unlikely, but I yeah, I get your point. I gave him a D plus.
Yeah, I just don't like this team. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not trying to crush it too much, Alex. It's just the where you picked players and the strategy itself kind of was at least head scratching to me.
Yeah, and then like two tight ends.
And I would love to
You get
talk to him about it to
Njoku.
see if, like, was Waddle sniped right before he took him? You know what I mean? Or, going was Rashid Rice taken right before Tank Dell, and then he kind of panicked and thought that he needed to get another wide receiver. Like he had wide receiver in his mind. So then when you sniped Rice from him, did he was like, okay, I need like my wide receiver now, and this is the second best one. I don't know.
Man, Jerome Ford in the 10th, like,
Yeah,
would be in the starting lineup.
yeah, I know, I know, and that would be fine, I think.
Yeah, 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 it would. It
So
would.
yeah, just I don't know what happened,
Ugh.
but yeah, I know.
All right.
I had a
We
feeling that
love
you
you,
were going to give
buddy.
a D.
We
Yeah,
love
we love
Alex.
you. We hope for success for sure. But let's go over to our fantasy champion last year, the BWI Beltway Wars Invitational. That would be Pat here. You're the Westminster Warbirds this year.
That's right.
All right. So last year, you won the championship and you went 8-6 during the regular season. We both gave you a B plus last year, so pretty consistent there. Both liked your team. Starting off with the first five, you go AJ Brown, Kyrie Williams, James Cook, Jalen Waddle, and Joe Burrow. Uh, Continuing there, Rashid Rice, Calvin Ridley, Jonathan Brooks, Chase Brown, Chua Hubbard, TJ Hawkinson, Josh Palmer, Cleveland Browns defense, and then Fryermuth, Tracy, and Buck Irving, who we talked about a little earlier in the pod. So just going through your first, I'm going to let you kind of take the floor here, just to try to understand how the draft board was falling to you and what your thoughts were. You go wide receiver, running back, wide receiver. I think you were, no, Charlie did it and Josh did it. And, yeah, no, running back. Just Charlie did that, I'm pretty sure, with one wide receiver, two running backs in the first 3 rounds. So, how did the draft board go? Were you anxious? Did you get sniped anywhere? How are your thoughts?
Did I get sniped anywhere? I got sniped on, as I said, on Chubb. That
Okay.
was probably it in terms of getting sniped, which is a good day if you're only sniped by one and it's a guy that's not going to play for a few weeks. But um, my catchphrase here is "got my guys."
Okay.
I got most of the guys I was looking for, more than I have in any draft that I can remember. I sort of knew at the ninth pick I was going to get the first guy that's sort of beyond the top eight. I think there is a tier drop off from eight to nine a little bit. I mean, granted, we're talking marginal degrees, but I do like the top seven a lot more than I like Brown. In that offense, there's some other weapons there. Still a great player. You and I have talked about Devontae Smith and Brown before, and which guy is going to be,
Yeah, I was wrong on
more
that last
effective
year.
than we.
I was wrong on that last year.
But I still like Devontae Smith, so it could, the
Right.
tables could turn a little bit there. Um, and they did bring in Dotson for what that's worth. But no, I these are all guys that I love. Kyron Williams was a guy I draft or that I kept in my other league last year. Waddle is a guy that I love. I mean,
In the
look,
fourth
Tyreek Hill. If
is,
he,
yeah,
I couldn't say no to that. I mean,
no,
I like him in the third round. I was able to
yes,
wait, 6 picks later and get him in the fourth. I'm comfortable with Burrow. He was one of the. I really like the Burrow Murray Prescott kind of range of quarterbacks, in addition to Daniels, where you got much later.
yeah.
But I feel like I waited enough and kind of got good value on him. Rasheed Rice, Calvin Ridley, two receivers I love. Rice has had a good preseason. I think he's ready for a breakout. And Ridley is a question mark, but hey, I can take a question mark at a wide receiver four position. Um,
And
and he has the
that
potential.
offense is going to be better this year. I'm a firm believer in that.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. You know, Tyler Boyd, Hopkins,
I think
and
Will
Ridley
Levis will be
there.
better. I don't think for fantasy purposes he's going to be very good, but I think NFL wise he's going to
Yeah,
be able to get it to his skill players.
he could. He's got the biggest, one of the biggest arms in the league, and Ridley is a downfield guy. So just for that fact alone, I like his opportunities. Jonathan Brooks, the fact that I got him with Hubbard,
Yeah,
Hubbard's going to be the guy.
yeah,
And when Jonathan Brooks comes back, they like him there. It could go either way. I mean, if Brooks breaks out, great. If Hubbard continues to hold that job, I've got them both. So I'm happy to kind of handcuff them a little bit. Um, tight end is my weak spot. I
yep.
I knew it as the board was falling, but second tight end started being taken before I had my first, and at that point I just said, well, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna play that game. I'm just gonna take a guy in Hawkinson, put him on the IR, hope he comes back and gives me a big boost in the middle of the season. So I'm happy. I got my guys.
Yeah, I think the draft board. It's kind of like what you said about my team, where it's this. It kind of fell, and you took the value where it should have been taken. You didn't reach really at all. Um, you just you saw the board, you saw the value, you picked a player where they should be picked. Maybe the one reach, I wouldn't even call it a reach, but maybe just in terms of ADP was Rice. But in terms of sleeper and actual ADP on Cross, I think sleeper was a lot lower on Rice than what a lot of people are. But
Yeah.
I love the first three. AJ Brown's gonna be fine. Jalen Hurts another year, another 1,200-yard season. Hopefully 8 to 10 touchdowns there. Kyron Williams, I'm not concerned at all about the news about the punt returning. He did that last year through weeks 1 through 3 and scored over 20
Yes.
points most of those weeks. James Cook is going to be really involved. He has that job fully now. He's a good player, good offense. Josh Allen running quarterback with a running back is always good. See Lamar Jackson making Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins look really good. So yeah, I like all of your picks basically. Chase Brown, I mean, yeah, I know I'm getting a little nitpicky in the ninth round. Don't He had one good run last year. That's kind of all we've really saw of him. Is Zach Moss gonna just take and run that job? He was taken 2 rounds ahead. And then, like you said before, the tight ends probably would have liked to have gotten, you switch out Chase Brown with Hubbard and then get Dallas Goddard there. I think that would just make your team even better if you did that. But again, it's hindsight's 2020. You don't know how the board's going to go. So overall, I thought it was a very solid draft. But let's go to least favorite and most favorite. So you can go ahead first. Your team.
My most favorite was actually a guy that I wasn't targeting, and that was Cook.
Okay.
James Cook in the third round, 3.9 off the board there for the Bills. I just like the value. The fact that I think I benefited from the quarterback run there. Um, I I do value him more than Camaro Walker Mixon. I think he went as the right number, but I think I got him later because the quarterbacks pushed him later. I think normally he might be an earlier round 3 pick.
Yeah.
So I was just kind of happy that he fell. To be able to pair him and Kyron Williams, I love just having those two running backs. And I didn't have to sacrifice quarterback or wide receiver because that run of quarterbacks pushed receivers down and it made it less likely that people behind me were going to take a quarterback in the round after. So I really liked Cook there. My least favorite pick is Fryermuth. I mean, I'm probably going to drop him honestly and find somebody else. I don't trust him, but he's as good a shot as any, I guess, from the waiver wire heap. So, I'm
And
going to live with it
the
and
one thing I will
hope
say,
that
it's a
Hawk.
new offense now. Arthur Smith is there. He made Jonnu Smith a thing. So
That's true.
it's a new offense there. So don't count him out just yet, is what I would say to that.
Yep.
My least favorite pick on your squad is Joe Burrow in the fifth. Not
Mm.
when I was thinking about targeting quarterbacks, the thing that I'm looking for is quarterbacks with rushing ability. That's the one thing I'm looking for, just to keep their floor as high as possible. Joe Burrow doesn't run. He has some injury stuff with his arm, which is the throwing arm, which is always kind of concerning. I think it was like nerve damage. Don't know if that's going to pop up again. So just a little bit concerned. I'd rather have Kyler Murray instead of
Mm.
Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow, you've spent a fifth round pick on him. I think I'd rather have Jordan Love in eighth than Joe Burrow in the
Mm.
fifth. Dak Prescott, not a huge fan of where he picked, but he, torched me last year, so go on him. I just think that just with he's a very talented NFL player. I just don't know how much in fantasy he's gonna need to throw for 4,000 yards and 35 touchdowns to justify that fifth round pick. I think for you, and he's not gonna have any of the rushing stuff, which kind of hurts there. My favorite pick is kind
So,
of yeah.
so if I had gone Pitts, Kittle, or Kincaid in the 5, and then instead of Rice taking Murray, you would have liked that a lot better.
Yes, but I'm getting to Rice in a second because he's my favorite pick here.
Oh, I thought you said he was your.
No,
Okay, I thought
Burrow's
you
my
didn't
least
like him there.
favorite.
Okay,
Burrow's my least favorite.
gotcha.
Rice is my favorite pick of your thing. He is going to be the number one outside threat. I think they're going to play there in Kansas City. I think they're going to play Hollywood Brown in the slot. He's going to be the outside threat. He's the only really outside threat. Juju Smith-Schuster's out there. Sky Moore, but he did nothing last year. Kadarius Toney is now gone. Not like he was catching anything, anyways. So Rashid Rice doesn't look like he's going to be suspended this year, which is also a plus. Um, just in terms of in the sixth round on maybe the most high-powered offense in the NFL, you getting the number one wide receiver option in the sixth round, I think you can't go wrong with that. Yeah. So make or breaks, since we don't need to read off the. Yeah, go with your make or break.
Similar to what Chubb is to the Alex team, Hawkinson is to my team.
Okay.
Drafting a guy that in a position where you need him to come back and be healthy and be a starter for you. I mean, if he hits and is anything 85% of what Hawkinson has been in recent years and comes back in week 4, 5, or 6, I think my team is talented enough that I'll be in playoff contention at that point in time. And if Hawkinson can come back and be most of what we've seen him be, I think it could put me over the top.
Okay, my make or break is Jalen Waddle. I think just
Mm.
in the fourth round, just a little bit of question marks just because of how many mouths there are to feed there in Miami between Devin Achane, Mostert, Tyreek Hill. Odell's going to be coming back at some point. I mean, probably not anything more than 35 catches a year, but that's just something that Waddle's going to have to contend with as being the second option there. I think that if he takes more of a active role and starts pushing Tyreek, I mean, Tyreek's getting up there. I think he's 30. Yeah, he is 30 years old. So does Jalen Waddle take that next step to really be on the same par as Tyreek Hill? I think it's possible. If you have that, he's definitely the make it player for you. But if he also has injury concerns as well. If he gets injured, has a hamstring like he's had in the past, that could really hurt your options from scoring, from going from Waddle to someone, let's say Calvin Ridley.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's go over to Jake here. Jake was in.
Oh, we're not grading my team?
Oh yeah, let's grade your team. Sure.
Okay.
I'll grade your team first.
I don't think. What did I give myself last year?
A B plus.
Okay.
I'll grade.
I
your
thought
first.
I did. Okay.
I gave you an A minus. Like your team, like your depth. All the starters are great. Even some of the depth pieces you can just plug and play. Not really to be too worried about it. Chua Hubbard, you can play him the first 4 weeks, and then once Jonathan Brooks comes back, you can play him if you really want to in that flex slot if you choose that. The only weakness here is really the tight ends, but I think you can get by with Pat Freiermuth. I think that he's going a little farther down than what he should. He's talented. He's big. He's like that Jonnu Smith kind of figure that they did have there in Atlanta with Arthur Smith. So I think that in the 14th round that he can be a top 12 tight end, and that's really all you need.
Okay. I felt really good about it, and so I'm going to grade it based on how I felt it went, and I think it went an A.
Okay.
I'm going to give myself an A here.
The
I
fantasy
also talked
karma
earlier.
is in effect.
I know. I debated doing that, but I really felt good about it. I mentioned earlier, I forget what team it was. I think it was Sarah's team with top picks on good offenses. I feel the same way here. Philadelphia, Los Angeles Rams, Buffalo, Miami, Cincinnati, Kansas City. I think there's some really good high-powered offenses in there, especially Miami, Kansas City, and Philly. Um, and so I like having pieces of good offenses. So I felt good about it. Like I said, if I can get Hawkinson back to fill that void at tight end, I feel like I'll be in good shape.
Okay, so going over to Jake's squad here. Also in the fantasy championship last year, came in second place. So good on Jake for making a run there. Jake in the regular season went 7-7, so he did make quite the run. Last year, I gave him a B minus, and you gave him a B minus as well. So we were both kind of low on Jake, and he exceeded expectations after his draft. Going into this draft, however, let's look at his first 5 picks. He goes Saquon Barkley at 10, Garrett Wilson, Davante Adams, Alvin Kamara, and Kyle Pitts. Then he goes Jalen Reed, Zach Moss, Jordan Love, Jameson Williams, Tyler Algier, Mike Williams, Brandon Cooks, K. Miller, I always forget what is his first name, Kendre Miller.
Injury, yeah.
Yeah, Steelers, Josh Downs, and Jason Sanders. Going, kind of what a lot of teams did. First 4 picks did running back, wide receiver, running back. Very solid. What did you think of Jake's team after the draft was over?
Age could bust. I think there is some aged senior citizens on this team, all younger than us, which is we're at that age where we have to say that. Actually, well into that period of time. But
Wait, you mean
Saquon
I'm not going to
Barkley,
get drafted at 34? I think my
maybe
dream's
not.
over. Okay.
Maybe not. A podcast host, maybe a good
Maybe.
second career, but probably not an NFL football
For
player.
sure.
Barkley, Adams, Kamara, Moss, Mike Williams, Brandon Cooks. These are all guys that are long in the tooth and approaching the end of their usable shelf life.
Okay.
I like a lot of these. That being said, I like the potential of these guys, but I just feel like there's a little bit too much going on here in terms of the age situation. So that's kind of my main take. Devontae Adams, they're in the third, maybe good value, but I'm just hesitant. I think these
fell.
guys are just getting too old.
He fell.
He did fall. He did fall. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, just looking at his squad, I'm gonna give you a question, okay? So because we haven't
Okay.
done this yet, where we pick a player and then see who's behind him that was picked. That if you would have rather had them than the player that was picked. Saquon Barkley.
Positioning myself as Jake's team.
Correct. Saquon Barkley
Okay.
goes
Oh, you're
10.
going first round. Okay.
Yep. Would you rather
Um,
have Jonathan Taylor?
yes.
Would you rather have Puka or not Puka? Isaiah Pacheco.
It's really close. It's really close.
Just off the bat.
Yes.
Okay. Derrick Henry.
Yes. No.
Kyron Williams.
No.
But it's close, right? Gibbs, I'm not
It's
going to
close.
say because I think you'd rather have Barkley than Gibbs. And then ETN. ETN is about the part where I
Mm.
see it.
Mm. Yeah, I hear it. I mean,
Just
he's 27.
right. So injury concerns in a new offense that he's not going to be the Eagles get in the goal line, push all the way. That's what they do with Jalen Hurts being able to bench or a squat like 500 pounds or whatever. So he's going to lose opportunities there. Injury history, a lot more weapons in the Eagles offense than what was in New York last year. So, and the Eagles like to rotate these people. I don't think they're just going to run Saquon Barkley into the ground. Looking at the depth chart, Kenneth Gainwell's still there. The ghost of Kenneth Gainwell and Will Shipley are there as well. I just don't know if his usage is going to be the same as it has been in New York with Philadelphia now, and I could see a touchdown regression or even a lack of getting the opportunities to score a touchdown because once they go on the one, Jalen Hurts is going to try to rush it in.
I hear the argument. I think I'm a little biased because he did end up contributing to my championship run toward the end of the season last year with that crazy game. I believe it was against the Eagles when he was with the Giants, where they just kept feeding him and feeding him and feeding him. I might have been in the semifinals or the the quarterfinals or semifinals
Right.
for me in the fantasy championship last year. So yeah, totally hear. I hear the argument. Yeah, it's very possible that he could be kind of a role player and not a star in that offense.
The
I hear that
one,
argument.
yeah, the one last thing I'll say on Saquon, another thing, Jalen Hurts runs the ball. Quarterbacks that run the ball don't throw it out of the backfield because they just take off instead of throwing it. You've seen this with Lamar Jackson and with they don't catch a lot of passes. So that's just another little thing. Does his receptions go down? Half point PPR with running backs is kind of very valuable to have a pass catching back. He just might not get the opportunity. So I just didn't. There was other players there that I would rather have than Saquon Barkley. Is all I'm saying. So let's go
Yep.
to favorite and least favorite picks. You go ahead since I've been talking a lot.
Okay, favorite.
Don't say Saquon
My
Barkley.
favorite. No, no, but not just the next pick, Garrett Wilson.
Okay.
I think a first round pick for a lot of people. So he sort of fell a little bit here, only a couple spots, but I like what that offense could be. Remember, everyone was very excited with the whole Rodgers Wilson thing. The fact that Wilson finally got like a quarterback who knows what he's doing that could throw him the ball. So I'm really intrigued by that upside. I very likely it, I very likely would have taken him with my next pick. I was very close if he would have made it there to pulling the trigger on Wilson. I like the potential. I like his talent. I like the situation with him being the star there for the Jets. And so that he's my favorite pick for Jake.
Okay, and what is your least favorite?
My least favorite by far is Jaden Reed in the
Yeah,
sixth.
yeah.
We know Jake's a Packers fan, so he's got Devontae Adams, the former longtime Packer. He's got Jaden Reed. He's got there's another one down here somewhere, I think. Jordan Love, quarterback. So maybe a little bit colored by the Green Bay love. So let's do this. We played the game with Barkley. Let's play the game with Jaden Reed and wide receivers that went after him.
Yep.
Okay, Jaden Reed or Rasheed Rice.
Rice,
Jaden Reed or Tank Dell.
Dell,
Jaden Reed or T. Higgins.
Higgins.
George Pickens.
Pickens. This is bad
Christian Kirk.
because this goes a while.
Christian Kirk.
Yeah, Christian Kirk. I'd rather have Christian Kirk.
Terry McLaurin.
Yes, I'd rather have Terry McLaurin.
Keenan Allen.
That's the line.
I agree. Totally agree. But Ridley. I'd rather have.
But I would probably rather have Jalen Reed than Worthy at price.
Yes, probably agree.
Yes.
I mean, you've mentioned it. Like, I've been avoiding Packers wide receivers, not because I don't like them as players, but because I don't know
There's
that
too many of them. Like,
there are.
Yeah.
Watson, Reed, Wicks, and Dobbs. Like, all guys that have flashed. All of them have flashed. And I'm worried that I don't know who the right one is going to be.
And they still have Luke Musgrave and Tyler Kraft, I think they have Tyler Kraft still, who are the tight ends.
Well, that's right, and they both used them both. That's right.
Let me make sure they still.
And by the way, Josh Jacobs, who can catch a pass or two out of the backfield, or 5.
Yeah, a little
right.
bit. Right.
So I'm just, I'd rather have those other guys, and I'd feel a lot better if I had one of those other guys.
Right. So yeah, I agree, but I'm not going to say that for. I'll start with my favorite pick here. My favorite pick, you're probably not going to agree with, but that's fine. I like Alvin Kamara. He's just always there. He's by himself. He's not affected by Jamal Williams. He catches the ball in the backfield. He's the most. Is he the most talented player on the field? He could be on the offense. He's getting up there in age, but can still have those monster games where he's scores 3 rushing touchdowns and catches 2. That's still in the ballpark here. And getting a player like that has that capability in round 4 is kudos there with no competition. He doesn't have any competition. Jamal Williams maybe, but last year showed that Jamal Williams wasn't even that involved. So I like Alvin Kamara there in the 4th. I would have taken him in the 4th if he came back to me. So he wouldn't have, but if he was there, I would have taken him. My least favorite pick, as I mentioned, Saquon. Not because I hate the player, but I just like the players ahead of him. I probably would have taken Taylor, Pacheco, Henry, and Etienne over Saquon.
Wow.
Kind of down on Saquon this year just because of what we saw with DeAndre Swift with the Eagles last year. They thought he was going to be this bell cow that caught out of the backfield and everything like that, and it just didn't turn out that way. DeAndre Swift is very talented, and he catches he just didn't do it, and they just had that rotation of running backs coming in and out, and Jalen Hurts running it in from the 1 all the time. I think there's going to be a touchdown regression. I think there's going to be reception regression. He's fine there, I would say, but there's just 4 or 5 other running backs there that I'd rather have instead of him.
Fair.
Okay, so
did Jake? I don't know if Jake texted us. Did he? Yes. Jake agrees with you. His favorite pick was Alvin Kamara. Okay. He has a chance to be a top back if he can stay healthy. He thinks he got good value with him in the 4th. I do agree with both of you there. I think he is good value there. I would have taken Walker over him at running back, but I do like him in the 4th round. Least favorite was Garrett Wilson. He thinks he has a chance to be great, but where I took him, he was the last decent top receiver, and there was just a drop-off after that. So I felt like I hadn't had to, or I wouldn't get a top-tier guy. I'm nervous about him this year. All that being said, it's probably Jordan Love that makes or breaks my team. Also, on a side note, I'm kind of excited about Jameson Williams. If Detroit still has their electric offense, I think he's got a chance of being a decent wide receiver option.
All right, one last time we're going to play this game, at least with Jay, because we played it 3 times now, but I want to play it again. Would you take, this is going to be quick, would you take Garrett Wilson over Puka?
Yes.
Over Drake London, I'm sure.
Yes.
And Chris Olave. Yeah. So, and Harrison, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm perfectly fine with where he took Garrett Wilson. That was the end of that tier. Like, the second tier was, I would say, starting with Drake London. Even though I'm high on Drake London, I think that's where that tier begins. Make it or break it. I'm going to start here. Make it or break it's Kyle Pitts. Easy. Only tight end on the team. He picked him in the 5th round. He has all the talent. He has all the physical attributes. He's speedy. He can catch the ball. Will he get the opportunity? Will Kirk Cousins look for him? And now that Arthur Smith's gone, hopefully he does. Kyle Pitts, easily the make or break. If he becomes, what he should be, which is a top 6 tight end, Jake's team could really fly.
I'm going to go with the Barkley for the reasons you alluded to earlier.
Okay.
It could be fine. It could be really not fine. You're right. The Eagles have done that to running backs in the past under multiple administrations at coach there. They did to Miles Sanders way back in the day.
Yeah.
These are talented running backs that seemingly just don't quite live up to what you hope they
I
are
think the
in
last
Philly.
one was
And
like Westbrook.
yeah, probably.
I mean,
That
remember
was
they had
really like top.
remember they had DeMarco Murray and Ryan Matthews.
Yeah,
Remember
that's
those
right.
guys? Yeah. So yeah,
Right. And then DeMarco Murray went to
DeMarco Murray had the
Dallas,
rushing
and then
title the year before, and then signed with the Eagles. So
right. Oh yeah, right. From Dallas to the Eagles. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
was it, or did he have a Tennessee stop there? He might have had a Tennessee stop there in between, but
Oh, you're right. Oh God, I can't even remember now. But
I
you're right.
had him
When
a
he went to
lot.
the
That's
Eagles,
why
he didn't love
I had him a
Okay.
lot. So, but yeah.
Yep.
So, but yeah. All right. So make or break. Perfect.
Hey.
So make or break.
Yep.
All right.
Grades.
Grades. Grade I have for Jake is a solid B.
Okay, I was a little bit more pessimistic than you actually.
Okay.
I went with a C
Okay.
there. I think the age concerns again bother me.
Yeah, and as I'm talking, that Jalen Reed pick is looking worse and worse. I mean, just
I
being
know.
honest. Like,
I don't like
does
it.
Jake
I
know
don't like
something
it.
we
I don't
don't?
like it, Jake.
He might know something
Maybe.
we don't. I don't know. Maybe he'll be second coming of Deontay Adams in Green Bay, who he also has
Yep.
on his team anyway. But
Yep.
okay, so let's go over to Charlie here at the back end of the first round. Last year, Charlie went 7-7. I gave him an A minus last year. You gave him a B, so we did have kind of a differing of opinion of his team. He goes running back, running back. He goes Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Nico Collins, Cooper Kupp, and Devontae Smith. So first 5 gets that core that we always talk about, the running back, wide receiver core. Then goes Dalton Kincaid, whatever this guy name is in Chicago. I'll never pronounce it correctly. Rome. Javonte Williams, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Tua, J.K. Dobbins, Jacoby Myers, Liggett, Xavier Liggett, Miami Dolphin defense. Is it Ray Davis for the backup for James Cook, and then Jake Elliott. So looking at Charlie's team, I like it. I'm just going to be honest. I kind of like it. There's a lot of high upside in here with his first 5 picks. And as we've been hammering over and over again, the first 5 picks are the most important. Just a lot of high potential in his first 5. What do you think?
It's solid.
Okay.
It's solid. What did I
Catchphrase?
give him last year?
You gave him
I'll tell you this. MB last year. Okay. My phrase here alludes to a little concern I have with it, and it's a minor concern, but it's a concern, and that is mouths to feed. There are a lot of mouths to feed when it comes to the wide receivers, and that's why
Yes.
I'm worried a little bit about them. Going running back, you know that this is always potentially an issue. So Nico Collins in Houston, we've already talked about the other two there, Tank Dell and
Diggs.
why am I blanking? And
Diggs.
Stephon Diggs.
Yep.
Cooper Kupp, right, was upstaged last year by Puka Nacua. Kyron Williams is obviously in that offense. And they also, I feel like, are known to throw in a third wide receiver here and there that can like make some plays. I can't think of who they have been, but I
And then,
feel like that's a
You're
thing.
talking about the Eagles or the Rams?
The Rams.
It used to be Van Jefferson, and they also have
Right.
They also
Yeah.
have that guy that we used to have, Demarcus Robinson,
Oh, right. That's right. That's another.
and he did well
Thank
last
you.
year.
Yes.
So,
So they mix it up a little bit there.
and I think Higbee's still there, the corpse of
Higbee, I think
Tyler Higbee.
Higbee's on IR. I
Oh,
think
okay.
I think he's on IR. And Devontae Smith, we've already talked about the Eagles and how many mouths to feed there are there. Even Odunze, that's how you say it,
Oh,
Rome
thank you.
Odunze,
Thank you.
um, potentially building chemistry with Caleb Williams. But we don't know. I don't know how good that offense is going to be. You have DJ Moore there. Um, there's not a whole lot beyond that, but DJ Moore, I feel like could be more of a focal point wide receiver in that offense. I think they're a running team. I think the Bears are
Yeah,
right now.
that sounds about right.
Um, so anyway, I just think the wide receivers there are a little bit tough to trust in terms of consistent wide receiver one production from week to week.
Okay, so I'm gonna go on the opposite of you. Um, Nico Collins, I'm not a big fan of, but fantasy experts love this guy. I don't know why, but they think that he's going to be the clear number one option there in Houston. He got paid the big bucks over the offseason, so they obviously trust him. He has a common rapport with CJ Stroud. So he fell a little bit as well. I could have seen him going early in the third round, maybe even the end of the second. But getting him at the end of the third, beginning of the fourth, I'm completely fine with that. Just the camp reports and the way that fantasy experts are talking, they know better than us, and they're heaping praise on Nico Collins. Cooper Kupp, it wasn't a couple years ago that he led the NFL in receiving yards. So he's fully healthy this year. He's had a good camp. I could see him maybe not going to that far, but becoming an even upstaging Puka Nakua. I could see that. He has a good rapport with Matthew Stafford. They're going to throw. It's a Rams offense. It's kind of high flying. So I could see Cooper Kupp becoming, a top 10 wide receiver again. It could happen. Devontae Smith, I think that's the biggest question mark out of these three, just because A.J. Brown's there and they're going to run the ball, especially with Jalen Hurts running the ball, running for touchdowns. That's going to hurt his touchdown production. Devontae Smith never had really great touchdown production anyway, but at some point you'd hope that it's going to increase a little bit. So I'm okay. I'm completely okay with picking him in round 5. But let's go favorite picks and least favorite picks. You start off here.
Yeah, my favorite pick here is actually down a little bit on the board, but Javonte Williams in the eighth. I was skeptical of Javonte Williams. Obviously, has an injury history, has looked good in camp. I think is generally more buzz in the fantasy community now than there was a month ago. Um, I think he could return to become a bell cow, and to get him in the eighth round, I think is great value. Obviously, Jaleel McLaughlin, who I think is on your team, showed flashes last year, but with a healthy Javonte Williams, he's still just 24 years old. I think he could really perform well above where he was drafted for Charlie. So I love that pick.
Okay, well, then least favorite.
And I would have taken him instead of Jonathan Brooks had he gotten to me 2 picks later. Least favorite is Derrick Henry.
Okay.
I think he's being overvalued a little bit. He's obviously a physical freak. He's obviously on a team that has is a ground and pound at its heart. As much as we try to be kind of throwing, I think the ground and pound, the sort of the thunder and lightning of Henry and Lamar could be really fun. I would just love. I would have loved this team if he would have taken Wilson at in the second round and gotten a second running back a little bit later,
Like Kenneth
maybe in the
Walker.
fifth. Would have been fine with Kenneth Walker, yep, as a 2. Would have been fine with a lot of those guys, Mixon, Walker, or Kamara. Um, so I think I just would have not taken the plunge on running back at that point in time because you're waiting a long time to get back to you to take your first wide receiver. It's a little bit more manageable to me if you're Tom or if you're Scott because you have a earlier chance to get that third. Now they both took quarterbacks there, but I don't know. I don't love that pick.
Okay, so my favorite pick out of Charlie's draft is Dalton Kincaid in the 6th round. He showed flashes last year. He was kind of still behind Dawson Knox when Dawson Knox came back. That's not going to be the case this year. He's going to be one of the focal points of this passing attack in Buffalo. With Stephon Diggs now going, all those targets have to go somewhere. He's the most talented pass catcher on the field for the Bills. So he is one of those like high upside guys that, he's middling around. What he went tight end 7. This one of those kind of tight ends that could sneak up into the top 4 for sure, just with his raw ability. They're not going to ask him to block. He's going to be in the slot a lot. Josh Allen looks for him when Dawson Knox isn't on the field, so that's great. I see a big year for Dalton Kincaid, and I think he was a steal in the 6th round. Going to my least favorite pick, I'm going to go with Tua in the 10th. He doesn't play good in the cold. Just how he plays. He likes to play in sunny Miami and early, and he puts up these huge numbers. But when you need him most, and by you need him most, you need him in the fantasy playoffs, when Miami doesn't win the division and has to go on the road to Kansas City or Baltimore, where it's going to be under 32 degrees, he just plays different. And, he could be good for the rest of the season, but you're going to need him the most in the playoffs, and you just can't rely on him. And on top of that, he's his only quarterback on the roster. So you're banking a lot on Tua. And, at the beginning of the season, when the weather's all nice and whatever, and he's playing in Miami, playing, in LA, in domes, whatever, he's completely fine. But when you get to those colder December, January games where you need him the most, he kind of falters. So I'm not a huge fan of drafting Tua. I would have rather had Jared Goff, to be honest, with the amount of times that he's going to be playing in a dome this year. Maybe even Brock Purdy. Trevor Lawrence is in the same conversation as well. I just think, you look at all the weapons on Miami, you're like, oh my gosh, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Odell Beckham. You have Achane and Mostert and all these like speed, and then Tua is just going to feed on the ball. Yes, at the beginning, but he is like the most hot and cold player I've ever seen in terms of like playing in bad weather. And if he has to go up a Buffalo, at the end of the season, during playoff time, watch out.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Okay. So what was his analysis? Did you get anything from Charlie? Maybe I did.
I did. Yeah, I actually did get one this time. His favorite, it's funny. So he and I are completely reversed on this. His favorite was Derrick Henry. And his least favorite was Javonte Williams, which is exactly opposite. He says he thinks he got Javonte in a good spot, but he didn't have a lot of touchdowns in previous years, so that gave him some pause. He says, I really like all my picks, so the least favorite was a tough choice.
Okay.
So obviously pretty confident there from Charlie.
For sure. So what grades are we thinking?
I gave him a B.
And I gave him a B+.
I gave him a B. Okay.
I gave him a B+. I'm a little more confident with the wide receivers. Nico Collins, Cooper Kupp, I expect a big year. Devontae Smith is a perfect 3. That's exactly where he should be. I'm a little more optimistic for Derrick Henry just because I think of the touchdowns that he's going to get. I could see him literally getting 18 rushing touchdowns this year. I think that is a possibility. So if he gets up there, watch out. He could be... I don't think this will happen, but there's an outside chance, I believe, that he could be the number 1 fantasy scoring running back this year, just based on touchdown production.
At 30. Has that ever happened? What's the last 30-year-old that led the league?
When's the last 30-year-old that's looked like him?
I know. He's different. He's built different. Yes. I hear you. Mm-hmm. So, anyway. All right. Well, I think our analysis explained our grades and our difference there pretty well.
Okay, so let's go over to our final team here. Josh with the bookend 12 pick, picking 12 and 13. Last year, Josh went 6 and 8. I gave him a B+. You gave him a C+. So good on you again for calling that out, Pat. Looking at his first 5 picks, Josh went Isaiah Pacheco, who I'm very high on, Puka Nacua, Brandon Ayuk, Richardson, and then Kittle. He rounds it out with Najee Harris, Devin Singletary, Chris Godwin, Corum, Romeo Doubs, Trevor Lawrence, Harrison Butker, Chiefs defense, and Taysom Hill, Justice Hill, and Vidal for the Chargers running back rookie out of Troy. So there you go. Troy represent. Looking at his squad, he goes running back, wide receiver, wide receiver. Pretty standard. Couple teams kind of went that direction with, at least two running backs, two running backs, a wide receiver, or two wide receivers, one running back in the first three. How else did you feel about Josh's draft after, going running back, wide receiver, wide receiver?
My catchphrase, my analysis here is I have questions. I have questions all across this team, starting in the number 3 pick with Brandon Ayuk, who currently is disgruntled. Don't know if I guess he's playing, I think. Thoughts that he was going to be traded to Pittsburgh. Even if he gets traded to Pittsburgh, do you love it? Do you trust that offense for the Steelers right now? I don't really. Richardson, I have question marks there. Obviously, he flashed really big time at the beginning of his rookie season and then got hurt, returning, from injury after, just 4 games. One of them he scored 4 points in. Well, I guess that's because he had only thrown 12 passes. So he's only thrown, 37, 47, 59, like 70 passes in the NFL. So I don't know. I'm curious to see how he does. A 4th-round pick makes me nervous. George Kittle did end up posting, as you said, number 2 tight end numbers, but it was a lot of like feast or famine. I've had Kittle before. I know that it can be a 1-pointer or a 3-pointer from time to time, and he'll have a blow up 27-point game. So he's a little bit boomer busty. His usage is not consistent. Najee Harris, do you trust that as your RB2? I don't. I like Jalen Warren a lot. I liked Jalen Warren a lot last year. Neither one of them really ever separated themselves too much from the other. Devin Singletary, as much as I trust him a little bit more to be the RB1 for the Giants, I still think that the guys behind him, a guy that we didn't talk about earlier in the draft, but Tracy, on my team, I took him in the 15th round. They like him, and he's looked good in the preseason. And Singletary, I've never really trusted. So just a few too many question marks. A Green Bay Packers receiver, we talked about that earlier. So I'm just questioning some of the backstories with some of these players.
Yeah, I have some of the same question marks. I even have a question mark about Puka. How is Puka going to
Yes.
do with a fully Cooper Cup? You know what I mean?
Yep.
I'm getting a little feedback from your mic. So technical difficulties, everyone. Hold on. You're good now. No, I can still hear myself.
Oh, I didn't change anything.
Oh, I don't know why it changed then. I'm okay now, I think. Okay. So
Okay.
Puka Nacua, not really sure about how that's going to work with a fully healthy Cooper Cup. He was very effective without Cooper Cup, but when he came back, numbers kind of went down a little bit, to be expected. Brandon Ayuk, we don't know where he's playing. He could be on the 49ers or he could be on Pittsburgh. Do you fade him if he goes to Pittsburgh instead of being on San Francisco? That's a question. Anthony Richardson, as I said, he's just very inexperienced. He runs the ball very violently when he does run, which can lead to injury concerns. George Kittle's getting older, boomer bust, like you were saying. So I do agree, just a lot of question marks. And it's kind of like one of those things with like what I was saying with Tom. It's like if everything works out, very, very talented. If it doesn't, it could be really bad, really fast. So let's do least favorite and most favorite. I'm going to go first. My least favorite pick in here is going to be Brandon Ayuk. Just for the same reasons, we don't know his situation. Is he going to play? That's like the thing. It's like he's holding out for a new contract. Is he actually going to go out there? You invested a 3rd-round pick in him. That's a little too risky for my blood when you could have gotten Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle, even DJ Moore or DK Metcalf, who I know you're high on. Just a lot of, like you said, his team, question marks. With that, My favorite pick here, which you're going to disagree with, is Najee Harris, actually. Arthur
Mm.
Smith loves to run the ball. He can, as he showed in Atlanta, can have two fantasy relevant running backs. And another thing, Najee Harris just doesn't get hurt. He's a very violent runner, and he just doesn't get hurt. He just keeps on keeping on. He's gonna. I'm more of a believer in Najee Harris than you are a believer in Jalen Warren. I think that he's going to be the bell cow where Jalen Warren's going to be the third down back. I think Najee Harris is going to get all the red zone work, and where you're picking him at 6 to get that kind of production, I think is perfectly fine for your number 2 running back when you waited to the 6th round.
That's convincing.
Okay.
I hadn't realized he's as durable as he is. I just looking back at the 3 years prior, his 3 years, and I think he's only had 3 years, and he hasn't missed a game in his
Yep.
career. So, um,
I don't take credit for that. It's just my fantasy football shows I listen to.
got it, got it. Okay, I hear that. I like that. I like it more after sort of hearing that. I do feel like, and I'm gonna just because it's the same topic. I mean, my make or break is another duo. It's the Harris Singletary duo, and if
Well,
one of those guys could
do
be a
the.
top,
Oh, you did the least. You did your favorite least favorite, didn't you?
no, I didn't, but I just want to skip there because we were just talking about
Okay.
Harris and that make or break of one of those two guys. Just like I felt,
Harrison
what was the
Singletary.
team when I no, when I said Moore, DJ Moore and Zay Flowers, if one of those guys can perform like a number 2 running back, I like it. I'm unconvinced that either one of those will do it. I think the offensive line for the Steelers is not in good shape. They haven't looked great in the preseason. Najee Harris
Can I stop you
was
one
number
second?
20.
Can I stop you 1 second? Would you like the Najee Harris pick better if Justin Fields was starting?
Not really.
You don't think the running
Not really.
quarterback helps the running back at all?
Not enough to make a difference to
Okay.
me. I'm just not a Najee Harris guy. I'm avoiding him in drafts. I think I just like him less than you. He finished as running back number 20 last year, and that's with a full complement. I mean, that's it. Didn't miss a game. So we're not talking about 20 on a points per game basis. If you did it on points per game, he's probably mid to late 20s.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. If he can be a top 20 running back, I like it. As a RB2, that's what you need him to be an upper echelon top 2 running back or RB2. And I don't think he's going to do it.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
As for favorite pick, well, I guess least favorite, I agree with you. Ayuk, we talked about it enough. Round 3 is just too soon given his current circumstances. Would rather have Cup, Waddle, Metcalf,
I think
at
Diggs is
least
where it
those
ends.
3, probably around there.
Yeah.
Him and Moore honestly are close to me for me. So favorite pick though, waiting to get Chris Godwin in the 8th.
Yeah.
I think is good
You're a
value.
Godwin fan.
Well, I am, and just like I think you think, and I agree with you that people are sleeping on Evans a little bit. I think people from year to year always sleep on Godwin, and when he's healthy, he's good.
And the one report I did hear about Godwin is that they're gonna make him play in the slot more, and he's a lot better in the slot than on the outside. So, yeah.
Okay.
But my make or break for this squad is going to be Anthony Richardson. Um, just you draft him in the 4th round, running quarterback. He needs to stay healthy. That's his make or break. If he stays healthy and gets, I don't think 800 yards rushing is out of the question if he stays healthy for full 18 games. So,
Mhm.
I mean, 800 rush. I mean, out of your quarterback, and then whatever he gets from throwing is just cherry on top, really. So I think that him just being healthy is Josh's biggest make or break.
Yeah, so it's a 17 game season.
Yeah,
He looks
17
like
games.
he was averaging about 40 yards. He had a 40, a 35, and a 56. So call it 40-yard average, maybe a little bit more. 40 times 17 is 680.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it could get there. Absolutely.
Okay, so grades. I've changed Josh grades as we're talking 3 times. I'm just letting you know.
I almost did, and I'm debating whether I'm going to change it or keep my gut. I'm going to keep my gut. For me, there are just more question marks than any other team. I forget who we had that for last year. I feel like there was a question mark team last year. Might have been Brian. I don't
Tom,
remember, but
maybe.
yeah, could be. And well, anyway, I'm going to stick with my C minus grade
Oh,
here.
okay.
I just think I there's a lot of guys on here that I just avoid in drafts. And I have questions about one like most of the top 8 picks.
Yeah. I gave him a B minus, so kind of the same vein. Just the Ayuk Puka kind of scares me at the cost. I know he's very talented, but in the second round, you want to look Garrett Wilson. I mean, take him over Puka. He doesn't have
Yeah.
quite the competition there in New York, so
Yes.
just take him. Just too many question marks with how Cooper Cup's going to reintroduce himself into that offense again, and then Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah.
We just don't know. He's talented, but we just don't know where he's going to be or if he's going to play. So just too much. Whew. Okay, so Pat, we are at 2:52.
Oh, wait, and you said 3 hours, but wait, we forgot to
Yeah.
read Josh's.
Oh,
Josh gave
read
us
Josh's.
some
Yes, read
analysis.
Josh's.
His favorite pick was Puka Nakua. As
Okay.
long as his knee injury, as long as his knee injury doesn't affect his performance, I think he could have a great season, possibly a top 5 receiver
Oh,
in
okay. So
fantasy.
he's high on him.
Eye on him. Yep. Least favorite pick was Brandon Ayuk.
Okay.
So that's three strikes you're out, Brandon Ayuk. The unpredictability of his status with San Francisco worries me.
I
So
agree. I mean,
absolutely.
he has everything said. So we're at 2:53 now. That is our draft coverage for the Beltway Wars Invitational 2024. We really did a lot of prep for this, guys. So we hope you appreciated it. We did more prep than I think we've ever done for the draft recaps. So I hope you liked it. We hope that you keep on listening in. Do you have anything else, Pat? Maybe a schedule update when that might be
Oh
on?
shit. I got to do that.
Yes, you do.
It it used to be a lot easier. I forget the software, the website that I used to build it automatically like changed and there's a setting that won't allow me to do what I need to do. I'll take another look at it, but so I've been doing it manually with like a big grid and like putting the picks,
Just like
putting the
having
people in
lines
order
and
based
lines.
on
So yeah.
it kind of is, and it's not rigging it. It's a system. I do it the same way every year. It's the same based on draft order and put them and the grids line up and everything. So, um, yeah, I'm the guy with the bulletin board with the what is
The
that Always
strings.
Sunny, right? The
Yeah.
meme. Yeah. Um, that's me building or
So hopefully
season
that'll be
schedules.
out
But
at least sometime this weekend. Is that too much to ask?
yeah, I think well, yes, it will be out. Yes, it has to be.
Okay.
We got football in almost exactly a week, right? A
Yep.
little bit less than a week.
Yep. So again, I hope you all enjoyed it. We'd love to hear some feedback. Anything that you'd like us to do during the weekly podcast. We got a few ideas, but again, thank you for listening in and be ready for week 1. It's right around the corner. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening and your support. If you enjoyed the show, please make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify.